Hello friends, welcome to Universe of Naruto_X. If you love Naruto what if stories and anime explanations, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Now let's begin today's story. When the second of her sons became a genin, Mikoto felt pride swell in her chest, but she couldn't quite quell the dull ache that her empty nest left. Sasaki wasn't one to spend all of his time at home to begin with. But now that he had his own team to train with, the little time he did spend at home, waiting around for his older brother, greatly diminished. Maybe I shouldn't have teased him so much by calling his training practice, Mikoto sighed. Plucking a ripe tomato from a vine, she tried not to picture the quivering excitement in her son's eyes when she laid out his favorite snack when he came back from training. He would always try to mask it with look of an indifference. Oh, teenage rebellion. Ka-san. Mikoto's ears perked up at the sound of a shoji door sliding and the tight voice of her pubescent child's voice. Looking over to their home's backyard entrance, Mikoto found Sasaki with his arms crossed in front of his chest, glaring holes into the floorboard. He's in a mood, isn't he? Mikoto chuckled to herself, trying not to show how adorable she found her grumpy child's pout. Wiping her hands on her apron, Mikoto stood up from her spot in the garden and made her way to her son. You're home early, Mikoto inferred, fighting the urge to ruffle Sasake's unruly locks of dark hair. As he started entering puberty, he fought against acts of affection, not wanting to be treated as a child any longer now that he was a genin. Want to help me prepare dinner? No, Sasaki replied quickly, cheeks flushing pink. I mean, no. Mikoto bit her lower lip to contain the grin threatening to overcome her face. Why was her youngest so flustered? My team wanted to come over. Sasaki huffed, rolling his shoulders back, trying to keep an air of nonchalance. Mikoto rolled her eyes at her offspring's mask of indifference. He was trying so hard to seem cool, calm, and collected. This isn't a trait he picked up from Itachi, is it? Mikoto shook that thought out of her mind. Her eldest son was a quiet young man, but where he was soft and calm, he didn't possess the nonchalant and blasé air Sasuke was exhibiting. They are in our sitting room. Mikoto squealed and clapped her hands together. Sasaki jumped at the sudden change from calm to excitement. Mikoto had been wanting to meet her son's genin team but never had the chance. She already knew about Naruto, her dear late friend Kasha's son, but she had never been able to catch a single peek at the third member of Team 7. I'll go make tea. Mikoto squealed once more and sped off to the kitchen to prepare snacks for her guests. Sasaki followed after his mother, mumbling requests under his breath that his mother not embarrass him and that she didn't need to do much, that they wouldn't be staying long. You really didn't have to make tea. Ka-san followed at his mother's elbow as she brought out a tray to the informal sitting room. Despite his protests, he assisted his mother by carrying a second tray holding sweets and sanbi. Mikoto didn't forget to include slices of his favorite fruit sprinkled with just a bit of salt. Good afternoon. Mikoto almost dropped the tray she was holding when she shuffled through the entrance to the sitting room. She had to hold in the squeal of delight trying to escape her throat when she spotted the 12-year-old sitting on cushions on the floor by her low table. Nar was his usual bright and sunny fidgety self. He kept craning his neck around trying to catch things he might have missed when he came into the house. A fluttery feeling filled Mikoto's chest. He had his father's coloring, but that was definitely Kasha's round cheeks. It had been so long since she last saw him, and he was just as adorable as her own 12-year-old son. Sitting much more properly back straight in a forced manner to show proper etiquette. Next to the blonde ball of sunshine was a young girl of the most unique coloring that Mikoto had ever seen. Rosy pink locks framed a creamy heart-shaped face, and from under pale pink lashes, a pair of jade eyes looked up at her nervously. On a larger-than-average forehead, lines creased as pastel eyebrows drew together, stressed from the scrutiny Mikoto was subconsciously putting on her. Ka-san. Mikoto snapped out of her daze and found her son sitting on a cushion next to the pink fairy. Already having set his own tray down, watching them all in a row next to each other, looking extremely colorful as a unit, Mikoto let her hand fall to her chest. Where's a camera when you need one? Mikoto's eyes twinkled as they darted from dandelion yellow to petal pink and then to midnight blue black. Okay, well, Sasuke huffed, his eyebrow twitching in annoyance. His mother wasn't usually this daffy. Ka-san, this is Haruno Sakura and you already know Nar. Hey, Nar shouted from his spot, no longer interested in the decor. Don't say my name like I'm some toss in Haruno Sakura. Mikoto immediately took a spot across from the pink fluffy child, ignoring the rude outburst from the now irritated blonde. What a fitting name. Yes, my parents thought so. Sakura's voice was soft and silvery. She wrung her hands in her lap, unsure of herself as she sat directly across from her crush's mother. Oh my goodness, she's so precious. Mikoto, still unaware of how nervous she made the rosette, continued to drink in the cuteness of the little spring fairy that graced her home with her presence. Wanna say that again, you jerk. Mikoto was snapped out of her reverie by the shouting of the other member of her son's team. Her own son was leaning back on his hands and rolling his eyes at the actions of the other boy. In her daze, she hadn't noticed that Sasaki and Naruto had started to argue. Naruto baka Sakura hissed in a whisper. She tugged roughly on Naruto's ear, trying to get his attention away from Sasaki. We're guests here. Will it kill you to behave for once? That was completely unexpected from the delicate ill-looking child. But all the same, Mikoto sighed drily. Even when angered, the little girl was the cutest thing. Being energetic was a good thing and much needed in a home where everyone was always so calm and withdrawn. Needed in a home. Mikoto's cheeks warmed up as it dawned on her that she was already in the process of adopting Sakura in her mind. But she couldn't help it. She loved her sons dearly. And no matter how feminine Sasake's prepubescent looks were, it was no substitute for a pretty daughter she could do on. And Sakura was perfect, so pink and adorable. Would you like to stay for dinner? Mikoto extended an invitation to her son's friends. Naruto opened his mouth, ready to accept, but Sasaki interrupted him. They can't. We're actually on our way to a team dinner with our sensei. Oh, right. The mask, Naruto stage whispered and snickered. It was nice seeing you again, Mikoto-ka, but we really do have to go. It was nice to meet you. Uchiha Sakura bowed politely and scrambled after her teammates, leaving a forlorn Mikoto alone with cold tea and half-eaten snacks. That's just too bad, Mikoto murmured, dusting herself off and cleaning up. She couldn't keep the silvery notes of the 12-year-old girl's voice out of her ears. What do you think of Uchiha Sakura? Mikoto asked her husband as she prepared their futon, ready to turn in for the night. Is there something you want to tell me? Fugaku choked on air. He hadn't expected another pregnancy now that their youngest was already 12. He was ready to relax and spend the rest of his years watching over their sons as they became honorable shinobi and enjoy quality time with his wife. No, Mikoto sighed, turning on her side. Just a thought, just a lovely thought, Mikoto hummed to herself as she flounced around her kitchen packing bento boxes. Each was neat and full of delicious foods, but she took special care in the design of one in particular. She never prepared sloppy bentos for her sons, but something about making one for a girl made her want to ensure that the box was impressive. Good afternoon, Oka-san. Itachi greeted politely as he reached for a syrupy treat lying on the kitchen counter. Itachi no. Mikoto made a quick slap at her son's hand, blocking him from grabbing any dango. Itachi's eyes widened, flabbergasted at his mother's behavior. Those are for Sasaki and his teammates. Oto doesn't like sweets. Itachi's eyes narrowed in suspicion. For the past few months, his mother had been acting differently from the norm. She would prepare more food than needed, enough for a squad of people as opposed to the humble lunch of onigiri she used to make for Sasaki to take with him on his way to training. His mother had also made changes to her usual daily schedule. Mikoto would take time out of her day to stroll into the training grounds to deliver lunch or wait at the gates to receive her son and the rest of Team 7 when they returned from missions. Another odd quirk was the increase in visits to a seamstress in the village as of late. No one could prove that she was purposefully causing the tears in clothing or finding excuses to take in items to the tailor, but the fact that she was straying from using the family tailor was highly suspect. It didn't help that she was caught muttering to herself. Same eyes as her mother. But where did the pink come from his team? Itachi an eyebrow and then let his face relax into a pleasant smile. I could drop off the bento boxes. Oka-san. Thank you for the offer, but I will drop them off myself. Mikoto chirped, wrapping the boxes in an oversized handkerchief for easy and safe travel. I wanted to go for a walk anyway. Get some fresh air. You work in the garden every day. Stop questioning your mother, Ida-chan. Mikoto snapped, untying her apron and running her fingers through her ebony locks, patting down any that strayed from its perfect order. Mikoto made her way to Training Ground 3, giving small smiles to passers-by that greeted her on the road. She liked to take the long way, creating a path that conveniently crossed her in front of the food shops in the merchant district. She enjoyed the sweet smells from the bakery, and the more her presence became commonplace in the area, the less likely it would be found odd if she ran into a certain cherry blossom child. One of the many downsides of the Uchiha district being located in the outskirts of town is how isolated it made the clan from the rest of the villagers. Mikoto had her friends amongst her cousins, but she couldn't shake the lonely feeling that came with surrounding herself with others that looked unnervingly similar to her. It was probably why she enjoyed chatting with Haruno Mebuki. The woman had little shinobi experience, being only a genin and a first-generation ninja from a civilian clan. But she more than made up for the differences in lifestyle by being one of the most pleasant conversationalists Mikoto had ever met. Only rarely did Mikoto feel a dull ache in her chest, remembering Uzumaki Kusha fondly and wishing that she could also be with them as they drank tea and talked about their children. She believes that the three of them would have been the bestest of friends, similarly to how close their children seem to be. Entering the clearing to Team 7's preferred training field, Mikoto spotted blurs of yellow and blue clashing with one another. Scanning the clearing, she found a lone blob of pink under the shade of a tree. Hideki Kakashi, their sensei, was lounging on a tree branch just above her. Hello, Sakura. A-chan, Mikoto, greeted the rosette girl, plopping down on the ground next to her. Sakura blinked up at her from a large tome about herbs and their properties. Her eyes changed from a hazy daze to bright and dazzling when she recognized the visitor. Hello, Mikoto-san. Sakura smiled sweetly as she folded a corner of the page she was currently reading and set her book aside. How are you today? Itachi is a charming young man, but his polite smiles couldn't cause the same fluttering in Mikoto's stomach that Sakura's did. Sometimes Mikoto truly was jealous of Mebuki for being blessed with a daughter. I am well. How is training going today? Sakura sighed and shook her head. She lifted the book she had been reading before Mikoto entered the clearing and handed it to her. I'm studying the medicinal properties of different plants. Sakura pouted, twisting pink lips in frustration. I still can't keep up, and studying is what I'm best at, so why not make use of it, right? Mikoto ruffled Sakura's short pink locks, trying to comfort the young girl. She understood her frustration. Team 7 had taken the Chunin exams recently, and unfortunately for Team 7, none of them had passed. The invasion had interrupted the third part of the exam, and Sakura was unfortunate to not have passed the preliminary round. Get back here, jerk. Naruto's loud complaining drew their attention to the center of the clearing. Sasaki had his hands in his pockets, face buried in the high collar of his shirt, walking toward the tree they were sitting under. Naruto's demeanor brightened up when he saw Mikoto and bounded after his friend. What are you doing here? Ka-san, Sasaki grunted. Mikoto sighed and held out her package of bento boxes as an offering. Ever since his reunion with Orochimaru in the Forest of Death, her grumpy child had become even more moody and volatile. The bags under her child's eyes, his ever-present scowl, and increased alertness made Mikoto want to grab her old gear and hunt down the snake son herself. The attack by Orochimaru had affected the entire clan. The other shinobi clan members demanded blood, fearing for their own children. Itachi became even more withdrawn and stoic, a silent promise to take down the snake himself for daring to target his precious younger brother. I brought lunch. Mikoto motioned to Kakashi to join them on the ground. It's time for a break, don't you think, Hideki-san? Well, I don't see why not. The Jonin instructor drawled out lazily. He sling-kicked to the ground and tucked his novel away. Mikoto's cheeks turned a light shade of pink, and she narrowed her eyes at him when she caught the title. She would have to have a talk with the man about his choice of reading material when he was supposed to be supervising 13-year-olds. Mikoto handed out the boxes and chopsticks. Sasaki raised an eyebrow at his mother when he spotted the cherry blossom motif on Sakura's wooden box. Catching the look of delight on Sakura's face, he just rolled his eyes and tucked into his own meal. Do you think you could bring us ramen next time? Mikoto ca. Nar smiled cheekily, rice on his cheeks. Sakura made a tutting noise and scolded him. Be grateful for what you get, Nar. Hey, why are you the only one with bunny-shaped apple slices? Naruto wed, pointing rudely at Sakura's lunch with his chopsticks. Sakura's cheeks turned a pink just a shade lighter than her own hair, and she turned her box away from his view. Apples were her favorite, and she had found the rabbit-cut slices adorable, but didn't want to be seen as childish, and the bunny-shaped nori. Sasaki raised an eyebrow at his mother. Sakura blushed a deeper shade of pink and scooted back towards the trunk. Sasaki had chosen to sit next to her, and when Naruto made the comment, he leaned in closer, his sleeve brushing against the skin of her upper arm. Mikoto hid her grin behind a pale hand. Sakura's crush on her son was obvious, but the subtle one he had on her was adorable. Mikoto noticed the small exceptions he seemed to only make for Sakura, and ever since the Chunin exams, Sasaki had been surprisingly more forward, choosing to spend time with Sakura, even outside of training. Yuke ha Sakura ra, Mikoto sang in her head. Every day that she got to see the pink child, the more she yearned for a closer relationship with her. She cursed her youngest son's attempts to keep his teammates away from their house. She couldn't understand what could be so embarrassing that he refused to bring them around. I just don't see it. Sakura-chan. Nar scratched the back of his head. Hinata-chan is always passing out whenever I'm around. She's probably scared of me or something. Trust me, Nar. Sakura huffed, tossing her head in a way reminiscent to the way she used to toss her long hair over her shoulder. Just ask her out for some ramen or something. I don't know. Nar crossed his arms in front of his chest, eyes shut as he thought deeply. He snapped his fingers and pointed at Sakura. I'll ask her to get ramen with me if you come along, too. We can make it a double date. Me and Hinata and you and the jerk over there. Sakura's face was the exact same shade as her hair now, and her jade eyes sparkled with excitement. It was the best idea Naruto had ever had. Mikoto clasped her hands together and bit her lower lip to hold back a squeal. It really was the best idea ever. Why would I want to do that? Sasaki mumbled, propping his chin on his hands clasped in front of him, resting his elbows on his knees. Don't include me in your stupid plans. Sakura's face drooped and she mumbled in agreement. She pushed her bento box away and buried her face back into her book. What just happened? Mikoto looked back and forth between the teenagers incredulously. Didn't Sasaki like Sakura? He was always walking her home and getting annoyed whenever Sakura's attention was on someone else. Did I misconstrue something? Whatever you jerk. Naruto threw a clump of grass in Sasuke's direction. You never want to do anything fun. It's okay, Sakura Aiken. We can invite Ka or Shino. I'm sure teammate would love to hang out with us cause we're awesome. They know how cool we are. You cool. Sasaki sneered. Yeah, right, Doby. Sasaki. Mikoto reprimanded. She frowned at her son, hands on her hips. Sasaki held his mother's stare before standing up and stomping away. Well, that could have gone better, Kakashi commented after having stayed quiet, pretending to have been disinterested the entire time. Guess there's more work to do if I want an Uchiha Sakura. Mikoto sighed and handed the tray of dango to Sakura, hoping to cheer her up. It's not a rare occurrence in the Uchiha main house for the youngest member in the family to sleep in on a free day. Uchiha Sasaki loathed mornings and everyone in his family and his team members knew how horrible he was in them and gave him a wide berth, avoiding his glares and bad mood whenever possible. Yawning and rubbing his left eye with one fist, the other hand under his shirt scratching his stomach, Sasaki made his way into his kitchen, expecting his mother and a late breakfast. He was not expecting his blurry eyes to catch a flash of pink crossing his line of vision. Catching his foot on the low kitchen table, Sasaki muttered a curse. At the sound, his lone female teammate looked up from the mixing bowl she was so focused on moments before he entered the room. Sakura looked up at him dully and then back to her bowl. Oh, hello, Sasaki-kun. Sakura turned her back on him, intent on ignoring his presence in his own kitchen. Sasaki grunted, not one to talk as soon as he woke up. Crossing his kitchen to open the fridge for some juice. He nonchalantly watched his teammate acting at home in his kitchen. A normal occurrence for the past few months now that his mother was obsessed with learning how to bake sweets and discovered that Sakura helped out in her father's bakery. Nearing 14, Sasaki was entering that part of puberty in which he was slowly inching in height further and further away from his other teammates. Nar was growing at a much slower pace, but it seemed that Sakura was going to stay tiny forever. He might as well have been towering over her at this point. Here, Sasaki reached over Sakura to hand her a white powder she was reaching for in an upper cabinet. She snatched it out of his hand, murmuring a small thanks. Sasaki let out a sigh, already fed up with the day. Sasaki was dreading this free day, the first free day after White Day. He knew eventually Sakura was going to be dragged into his home by his mother and he would have to face her in a setting outside of training. It was easy to ignore the way she avoided him when they only had to interact during training and missions, but he couldn't pretend she didn't exist and that it didn't bother him that she was acting differently than usual when she was invading his space. When are you going to stop being mad? I'm not mad. Sakura snapped, a dull red smearing across her cheeks and nose. Sure you're not. Sasaki crossed his arms across his chest, leaning against the counter. He continued to watch her flit about. Where's Ka-san? There's really nothing to be mad about, so you don't have to concern yourself with my mood. I wasn't. Of course you weren't. Sakura's shoulders slumped and she turned her back on him once again. Keeping his eye on the white circle on her tunic top, Sasaki sighed inwardly. He hadn't tried to make the situation worse, but he really had no idea how to talk to her properly. What did I even do? For the first time ever, Naruto and Sakura had reached their meeting point at the bridge before Sasaki had. They were sitting down against the railing, Nar watching intensely as Sakura tied a ribbon around a small box in her lap. It was a nice attempt, but no way in hell am I letting you give Hinata this box without a cute bow. Sakura lifted the box gingerly and dropped it gently into Naruto's waiting palms. Sasaki coughed, bringing his teammates' attention to his presence. Hello, Sasaki yo. Nar jumped to his feet and circled Sasaki like a shark. He reached over and patted his pockets, earning him a thump to the back of his head. What are you doing, loser? Looking for your gift, Naruto whispered, cupping a hand to the side of his mouth dramatically. I already gave Sakura a chan her white day gift from me, so where's yours? Why would I get her anything, underscore, it's the polite thing to do. She gave you a Valentine's Day gift, so you return the favor. Sasake's eye twitched. Was the idiot really lecturing him about manners? I mean, even Rock Lee gave her a gift, and I don't think she even gave him Jerry chocolates. Sasaki looked over at their pink-haired teammate and saw an obnoxiously extravagant bouquet of flowers by her on the ground. Yamanaka definitely had a hand in the loud monstrosity, probably hoping Sakura would be impressed with the flowers and turn her affections away from Sasaki. They're going to wither and die. Useless gift. They're not useless. Sakura frowned, cradling her flowers as if Sasake's words would cause them to shrivel up. They're nice. Why even bother accepting them if you don't even like him? Sasaki huffed, blowing air up at his bangs. You're just leading him on that way. There's nothing wrong with accepting flowers. They're pretty, and it was a nice gesture. Sakura sniffed her bouquet, turning away from him haughtily. It's not a nice gesture if he expects something out of it. You're telling him he has a chance and that you're going to follow through on his advances. Ever wonder why I don't accept any of your stupid flowers? Naruto let out a loud gasp and Sakura opened her mouth and then shut it and then repeated the process. Her face had become as pink as her hair. Sasaki would never admit it to anyone, but it was kind of cute when her face colored like that. He would probably murder someone if anyone knew he used the word cute to describe anything. I guess that makes sense, Sakura said softly and turned her back on her teammates. Naruto slapped the top of Sasuke's head and stomped away from him to console his other teammate. Sasaki sighed and leaned on the railing opposite them. He hadn't said anything wrong, so he wasn't going to do anything about it. Sasaki sighed and chanced a glance at his pink-haired teammate. Her eyebrows were furrowed together, causing lines to form on her larger-than-average forehead. Her plump pink lips were pursed together in annoyance, and altogether she looked pretty adorable when upset. Now I'm thinking things like adorable. Snap out of it. It wasn't that Sasaki couldn't see Sakura as appeal. He was a 13-year-old boy and had hormones just like all the other kids his age. He just wasn't going to act like the dead last loser and rant about how pretty certain girls were. Sasaki wasn't blind. In fact, he had better eyesight and was genetically disposed to have better observation skills and notice more than the average person. Sasaki knew just how pretty his little pink-haired teammate was, and she always smells good. Why does she always smell good? But Sasaki also understood the expectations placed on him as an Uchiha. Pretty, sweet, and smart as she was, Sakura wasn't an Uchiha. There was no point in putting each other through the inevitable heartbreak of separation once Sasaki had an arranged marriage partner. Sasaki just had to hope that a little kid crush would just go away after a while. No matter how pretty she is, Sasuke reached over and brushed flour off of Sakura's cheek with his thumb. He hadn't meant to reach out to touch her, but it was one of those things his body reacted to on its own whenever she was around. Wide jade eyes peered up at him through light eyelashes and heat started to creep up his neck. Sorry for the wait, Sakura-chan. Sasaki dropped his hand from Sakura's face at the loud outburst from his mother. Sakura dropped the whisk she was holding with a loud clatter. So annoying, he mumbled. Can't you be a little neater? Stop being rude, Sasu-chan. Mikoto sighed, donning her apron and tying up her hair in a high ponytail. If you're not here to learn how to make Mont Blanc, then you can head out. We're having girl time, Mont Blanc. Sasuke wrinkled his nose. What the hell is that? Mandarin to you. I guess, Sasu-chan. It's a chestnut cream cake. Mikoto rolled her eyes and chuckled. Boys, Sasake's eye twitched at his mother's dismissal. She had been doing that a lot lately. Because of the Forest of Death incident months back, and the sand invasion, Mikoto was even more overprotective than usual, which was already bordering on ridiculous. But in domestic settings, she no longer coddled him with the same fervor. Sasaki glared at the most likely cause of this new rift between him and his mother. Something smells sweet. Sasaki looks at the back door and watches his brother walk in with their cousin Shui. They're both scratched up and dirty. Back from a mission, Mandarin Itachi Nissan Sakura gestures to her mixing bowl bashfully. Her cheeks are a delicate shade of pink and her eyes shimmered with something Sasuke can only assume was adoration due to the similar way jade eyes sparkled like they used to when directed at him only 2 weeks back. What? Would you like some when the cake's done? Sakura beams up at his older brother and a cold swooping sensation settles in his stomach. Sakura wasn't supposed to be looking at his 18-year-old brother like that. He was a deadly Ambu operative and too quiet and too old. Hey, shrimp. Shui ruffled Sasake's spiky hair, attempting to agitate the young teen. Sasaki slapped at his hand, not in the mood for Shui and his antics. I would love some, Itachi replied politely, setting his bag on the floor by the door. I didn't expect to see you around now that you're apprenticing with the god. Sasake's eyes narrowed at the direction that the conversation was going. Sakura, skinny little pink thing, apprenticing with the Hokage. And not only that, but he hadn't even heard about it. So, how did Itachi of all people know? Why was Sakura talking to his older brother? Why was his older brother talking to his teammate? And since when did Sakura call him Nisan? Something was up and Sasuke didn't like it all. Something was different about Sakura. Yaman Nakaino wasn't as self-absorbed as people thought. She was quite observant, especially when it came to her best friend and rival. And something was definitely up. You're making faces again. Forehead. Ino flicked Sakura on the forehead. Sakura would have normally been able to avoid getting hit, but she was so focused on her book, she wasn't aware of her surroundings. I thought you were here to keep me company. Ino had to spend her free day helping out in her family's flower shop. She had somehow convinced Sakura to waste her free day helping her out. Not that she actually was going to help. Sakura had been studying since she stepped foot into the shop in the morning. I am keeping you company, pig. Sakura rubbed her eyebrows with her thumb and index finger, finally putting her book down. And I wasn't making faces. Yeah, you were. You do it all the time when you're trying to memorize something in one of your giant books. Ino sighed and dusted off her apron. You didn't even notice when Itachi-san walked in for his mother's order of lilies. Wait, Itachi-Nisan was here. Sakura's eyes went wide and her cheeks turned a light pink in embarrassment. How could she not greet her crush's older brother? He probably thought she was rude now. What a horrible impression to leave. Yes, Sakura. Ino rolled her eyes. He stared at you for a bit, laughed, and then left. It's not fair that you know all the gorgeous guys. Why couldn't I have been the one on the same team as Sasaki _? Ino always complained, but she wasn't serious. Sure, Sasaki was good looking, and so was Itachi, but all they were good for was eye candy. She knew how clan dynamics worked and she knew she would never have a shot with the clan heir as the heir to her own clan. The Uchiha were known to rarely marry outside of their clan. Plus, she never realized how boring Sasaki really was. All he did was train all day or fight with Naruto. She was also kind of tired of squealing. After hearing other girls do it, she started realizing how stupid she must have looked and sounded. And her pride couldn't take looking so pathetic. She was way too pretty and smart to be following some guy around in a flock of fangirls. She was a catch and one day some guy would be the one following her around. Damn it. Which brought her back to the Sakura issue. Sakura had held back on a lot of her obsessive crushing since their Land of Waves mission and calmed down even more after the Forest of Death. She was now even more far removed from the clingy girl she was before. But Ino could still see the way Sakura looked at Sasaki when she thought no one was looking. She could see the way Sakura snuffed glances and turned bright pink when caught. What's up with you and Sasuke _? Sakura opened her mouth to protest, but Ino cut her off. Don't lie to me. I know something's going on. Nar said you guys have been acting all weird around each other ever since White Day. Man, and I thought he would get all jealous when he saw the flowers Lee got you. I worked so hard on that bouquet. Ino Sakura flushed red. You tried interfering. What were you thinking? It was just a little push. Ino defended herself. Shika said there had to be something going on between you two and I wanted to test it out. Who knew Sasuke-an was such an idiot? It wasn't all Shikimaru. Ino noticed things had been different after the Chunin exams as well. She was observant, of course. She thought she would feel jealous seeing Sasaki walk Sakura home after training and missions, but instead of feeling sick or hurt, all she felt was a weird bubbling excitement in her stomach. But she also felt utter irritation. Sure, Sakura was tiny with no appeal, but she was pretty with the greenest eyes ever and exotic pink hair. Ino's best friend was pretty, and for all the greatness of the sharing, Sasuke had to be blind not to notice. But then again, he is friends with Naruto and he still hasn't realized how much Hinata likes him. Maybe denseness is contagious. I should get Sakura checked out. You don't have to worry about me. Sakura packed up her books in her bag. We should worry about Hinata. Poor girl has been going out to eat ramen almost every other day with that _, and he still thinks she only likes him as a friend. I'm worried about her sodium intake. Speaking of intake, Ino poked Sakura's stomach. I've noticed you don't diet anymore, which is good. You really didn't need it. How do you expect to grow curves if all you are is skin and bones? Mikoto-san won't let me diet. Sakura mumbled, hefting her bag over her shoulder. She says growing girls need more nutrition. She even spoke to my mom about it. Do you have any idea how long my mother lectured me about teens going through puberty needing to eat? I do. Ino grimaced. She had already had that discussion with her mother the year before. She had already given up on that trend. Sort of. Her mother insisted that being an active ninja was enough exercise to keep her at her ideal weight and size. Your mom ended up speaking to my mom about it. She warned her that I might be unhealthily dieting, too. Luckily for me, my mom doesn't think I diet anymore, especially considering how often I go out to eat barbecue with Shika and Choji. Well, of course you wouldn't diet. You porker, Sakura teased. Inwardly, she cringed. Ino was just so pretty and willowy, and she was already developing a lovely figure. Sakura was still waiting for a few inches to be added to her height. At this point, the only member of the Konoha 12 that was shorter than her was Hinata, and Hinata at least was curvy. Hey, where are you going? Ino clung onto Sakura's arm as she tried to exit the shop. You were supposed to hang out with me today. I have to go prepare for my team's sleepover. Sakura half-dragged Ino out to the street. Naruto leaves to go training with Jiraiya-san in 2 days. He won't be back for a while. So, we're having a sleepover. So, Sasuke-K's going to see you in your bunny pajamas. Ino let go of Sakura so she could hold her sides as she burst out laughing. I grew out of those. Sakura snapped her face a tomato red color. You wore them when you spent the night at my place last week. Ino gasped, tears in her eyes from laughing. You should try and get pajamas before he comes over. I'm barely 14 and he's only 13. Nothing's going to happen. Not with that attitude. Ino waved to her back as Sakura stomped away. Itachi missed a lot of things about his brother from before he entered puberty. He missed how he would smile cutely and beg him to train with him in a way that made him look like a neglected puppy sometimes. He missed how he would call after him. Nissan, Nan. He missed when Sasuke didn't know how to breathe out fireballs. He especially missed when those fireballs weren't directed at him. He actually got you this time, Izumi giggled, fingering the singed part of the end of Itachi's ponytail. Well, the shrimp was going to land a hit eventually. Shui yawned and pulled off his nin sandals to soak his feet in the lake. The three of them could usually be spotted spending any passing free time on the docks together. The more shots he takes, the more he lands. I guess he's over his brother complex, Izumi laughed, covering her mouth with a hand. She was still a little miffed that Sasaki never did warm up to her. She was sure he was only slightly more polite with her than Shui because she was a girl. It shouldn't have bothered her so much, but everyone liked her, so she took it as a great insult that this one kid didn't. Maybe his sneak attacks are payback for you declining all of his requests for spars. He's never been this aggressive before, Itachi mumbled, barely paying attention to the conversation, lost in thought. When did it start? Izumi took out a kunai and trimmed the burnt parts of Itachi's hair. What a shame. His hair was so silky, too. About a few weeks back, Shui answered, handing her over a carton box. Here from Haruno. Izumi squealed and attacked the box. She gushed over how cute the little macaroons were. She set aside the cherry ones for herself since they were the cutest and were pink. Oh my gods. Itachi groaned, smacking himself on the forehead. Haruno, what about Sakura-chan? Izumi asked through a stuffed mouth. Shisui made a face at her and Yumi stuck her tongue out at him. My brother is a underscore. Itachi shook his head and chewed on a macaroon. He was slowly becoming addicted to the baked goods from Spring's Blossom Bakery, and the little Haruno wasn't helping by bringing over sweets and treats for him and his mother. Itachi was growing a soft spot for Sakura. Ever since he found out exactly what happened in the Forest of Death, he had newfound gratitude towards the girl for protecting his little brother and helping him through the first moments of the cursed seal. He also wasn't blind to how happy she seemed to make his mother. Really happy. If he were anyone else, a certain teenage boy, he would probably have been jealous. But Itachi wasn't particularly close with either one of his parents, and he could share his brother's attention if things were going the way he thought they might. Not that it's news that your brother is a underscore, Shui smirked at the glare Itachi sent his way. Only Itachi could talk about his brother that way. But why is he a underscore, this time? He's a underscore, Itachi huffed. Because he's a jealous brat. Izumi and Shui's eyes went wide, and then at the serious expression on Itachi's face, they burst out laughing. Sakura posed in front of her floor-length mirror, hands on her hips. She twirled side to side and fingered the hem of her tunic-styled chamisole. She decided to heed Ino's warning and ditched the top of her flannel bunny pajamas and replaced it with a plain white tank top. She kept the bottoms since they were the longest bottoms she owned, and wearing tiny shorts in front of her male teammates was pushing it. Sakura-chan. Nar banged on her bedroom door. Are you going to make a sleep in the hall? I was getting changed. Be patient. Sakura ripped her door open and gaped at Nar. Do you really wear a cap to sleep? What's wrong with my cap? Nar grumbled, pushing past her. Sasaki snorted and followed after him. Out of the three, he had the plainest sleepwear, a pair of gray sweatpants, and a black t-shirt. They had spent most of the evening playing cards and board games. It was a simple night in, but Naruto was content. It beat hanging out in an empty apartment, and Sasaki refused to let them stay the night in the Uchiha compound, mainly because he didn't want Naruto to mess around in his room. I want to sleep in the middle. Naruto launched his body onto the bed, crashing into Sakura in the process. Nar had insisted that they all sleep on the same bed while they were still small enough to fit all together. He had underestimated how big he and Sasaki actually were. Idiot. Sasaki scolded, dragging Nar off the bed by his legs and climbing into bed. Nar exclaimed in protest, but Sasuke stubbornly kept his place in between his two teammates, the same place he took on missions when it was freezing and they needed to huddle for warmth. Naruto had a habit of cuddling with whatever was closest. And for some reason, it bothered Sasaki more when the blonde underscore tried to snuggle with their female teammate than when he clung onto him at night. But just barely, he still wasn't a fan of being touched. Nar turned out the light and climbed into Sakura's bed, grumbling about jerks and unfairness. Hi, Sakura whispered. After Sasaki had adjusted his body to get to the most comfortable position, he realized just how close his face was to hers. Noses almost touching, he was close enough to count the almost invisible freckles that dusted Sakura's cheeks and the bridge of her nose. Swallowing, Sasaki returned the greeting. He cursed to himself when his voice came out hoarse and a little strangled. Sasaki scooted back away from her and ran into Nar. Hey, you're going to push me off, underscore. Nar kicked at Sasake's legs until Sasaki moved back to his original position. Luckily for him, Sakura had turned, so her back was facing him. She's got freckles on her shoulders, too. Sasaki fisted the sheet in his hand and gritted his teeth. It was going to be a long night. There were very few moments Sasaki ever felt jealous of Naruto. Like when he showed the ability to summon a frog, when he saved Sakura from Gar. Now, when his mother is fawning all over him, I expect a letter at least once a week. Mikoto chides Naruto in advance as she gives him yet another last embrace. I bought you all of that frog-printed stationery for a reason. Of course, Mikoto ca Naruto chirped, causing Sasuke to roll his eyes. All right, everyday believe it. Kiss up. Sasaki thought bitterly as he crossed his arms in front of his chest. Sure, the underscore was his friend, but did he have to come see him off? It's way too early in the day to be up unless there was a mission or training. Sweet snacks, Naruto exclaimed as Sakura handed over her going-away present, a box of treats from her father's bakery and sanbi from Sasake's uncle's shop. The underscore is his friend. He's not going to not give him something, which is why he also gave him a new set of kana and shuriken the day before when no one could see him giving him a going-away present. Hey, jerk. Nar approached Sasaki with his arms spread wide. Sasake's eyes widened in panic. No, come on. I won't see you for a long time. One hug. Stay away from me, loser. Sasaki sidestepped as Naruto launched his body at him. Nar face planted with a loud thud. You're an underscore, you know that. Nar complained, brushing himself off. He pouted and walked over to Sakura to give her a hug instead. He leaned in to whisper in her ear and she turned bright red before punching him. He just won't quit. He creeped up Sasake's neck. He knew exactly what Nar had said to set Sakura off. Nar had been badgering the two of them all yesterday about what had happened before he had woken up. He hadn't believed Sakura's excuse for the rude wake-up call, and for good reason. Sakura is a really bad liar. I wonder why Hinata isn't here. Sakura looked around as if her question could summon the tiny Hyuga. Oh, she said goodbye yesterday outside of Ikyaku's. Well, tried to, I think. There was some mumbling, which is weird cause I swear she was getting better with that. She said something about not being able to see me off, Nar explained. She gave me some of her special ointment for my trip. The Hyuga probably wouldn't let her come today. Mikoto's voice took on a cold tone. It was no surprise that she wouldn't find it acceptable how they tried to keep the little heiress away from friends they believed were inappropriate, mainly Naruto. Her cold demeanor also had a little bit to do with the animosity between the two clans. Sasaki sighed at the icy stare his mother was wearing. It wasn't a new expression. She wore it around the compound all of the time when clan members whispered amongst themselves whenever Naruto visited. Itachi. Sasaki looked toward the gate as it was the direction that Naruto was looking at and there was his brother coming toward them. You came back from your mission just in time to see me off. Nar grinned from ear to ear. Sasuke swore Nar was going to end up breaking his face one day from smiling so much and so widely. Oh, you're leaving today. Itachi teased, earning himself a pout from Nar. No one needed to know that he did in fact come back from his mission just in time to see the hyperactive blonde off. It was just coincidence when he did nice things for his little brother's friends. Yes, coincidence. Time to go, kid. Jiraiya, who had been waiting patiently by the side, informed Nar. The small group seeing Nar off watched as Nar became a speck against the colors of the early morning. He kept turning back to wave to all of them. They all waved back when he did, but after a while, they all got tired of indulging him since he wouldn't stop turning to wave until he could no longer see them. I have to go see Sama now, Sakura announced after a while of watching the empty road. I need to report in as well, Itachi smiled softly down at her. I'll walk with you. I'll come with you guys, Sasaki said, falling into step right in between the two of them. Mikoto brought up the rear, giggling into her hand at her son's actions. Are you sure? Itachi smirked to himself. He caught Sasaki glaring at him every now and then through his peripheral. Wouldn't you rather go home and sleep some more before you have to head to training? You did get up pretty early today. No, I'm not a kid that can't train on a few hours of sleep. I'll just get an early start today, Aniki. Sasaki snapped at him. Itachi had to hold back a smile, hiding his amusement. He was still getting used to no longer being called Nissan by his brother, who seemed to have a new aversion to the word. Or you can help your dear mother with some errands. Mikoto cut in. It had been a while since she had some mother-son time, and she could use some help with bags. Sasaki was also the perfect candidate to join her on her mission to the Haruno's bakery. She still hadn't seen Sakura's father, and she was getting even more and more curious as the days went by, and no doubt there would be some benefit to Sasaki meeting the man, especially in his mother's presence. He was more likely to be on his best behavior. Then Sasuke stiffened up and looked at his mother and then to his brother and then back to his mother. He wasn't averse to the idea of helping his mother, but he also wasn't interested in the task. Sasaki wanted to follow his brother and his teammate, but he really didn't have a good enough reason to excuse himself and still continue to walk with them. I will join you on your errands, Ka-san. He glared one last time at his older brother before following his mother down a different street. The silence was awkward. Sakura was a chatty person, and walking alone with someone as subdued as Uchiha Itachi made her nervous. Sakura was used to walking with someone in silence. Sasaki barely spoke and would sometimes give her an irritated look when she babbled too much. The difference though was that with Sasaki, excitement bubbled in her chest and she felt butterflies in her stomach just being in his presence. Itachi made her feel like she had to be on alert at all times, wary that she was being silently judged. It was a peculiar feeling considering Itachi was a kind person, but at the same time, it put her on edge. He was Sasuke's favorite person, and she wanted to be liked by Sasuke's favorite person very much. Did something happen with my little brother, Sakura-san? Sakura stiffened up at the sound of his voice. She hadn't expected for him to say anything as they made their way to the Hokage Tower. She especially didn't expect that type of question. What do you mean? Sakura laughed nervously. What makes you think something happened? Something Nar said yesterday made me curious, Itachi replied, the corners of his mouth lightly tugging upwards. I'm going to kill that idiot the next time I see him. You shouldn't listen to anything, Naruto says. Nothing happened. You're a terrible liar. You know that. Itachi chuckled softly. A bad trait in a ninja, Sakura deflated at that. But a good trait in a person. You're a very honest young lady. Sakura blushed and looked at her feet. On one hand, she had mixed feelings, both good and bad, for the small comment, but on the other hand, there was no way she was going to tell Itachi that his brother was a cuddler. She had woken up in a tight embrace. Sasaki using her as a body pillow. The more she tried to escape before he woke up, the tighter he held on, grumbling in the process. Itachi hadn't heard anything from Nar. He thought it was more likely to find out about his brother's odd behavior the day before if he made it seem like he knew more than he actually did. Itachi had assumed Sasuke's flustered behavior had to have been a result of having slept over at Sakura's house for Naruto's going away party with his team. A small rather minuscule sadistic part of Itachi wanted more fodder to tease Sasaki with. It was starting to become much more amusing now that he was older. He also wanted to be able to tease him while Sasaki still couldn't match him in skill as some of his responses to being teased now involved flinging kana at his older brother. Nothing happened. Itachi Nan Sakura turned a deep shade of pink matching her hair. Really? Okay. Itachi said in a mock disappointed tone. You can speak to me about anything. You do know that, right? Yes. Sakura beamed up at him. Although Itachi made her nervous at times, he had been a good source of comfort a few weeks back when she was feeling down after the incident with Sasaki and Lee's flowers. Once she did get talking, he was a fantastic listener and gave wonderful advice. It was like having an older brother, which made her feel warm inside at the thought. Nar made up for her being an only child by playing the younger brother role in her life, but it was nice to have someone that was like an older sibling. Sasaki so lucky to have such a nice big brother. Sasaki never felt as unfortunate to have an older brother as he did in this moment. Usually there was very little Sasaki wasn't willing to do if it meant his mother would be happy. Usually that meant running her errands or drinking tea with her in the afternoons instead of training or sitting on the Ingawa and listening to her chatter as she worked in the garden. So holding her bags as she ran errands in the market and merchant district wasn't that big of a deal. Except it completely was because it left Sakura and his older brother alone together. Sasaki already had the suspicion that Sakura might have turned her affections to his brother. She had just become somewhat bearable, no longer clingy or excessively fawning, and he was starting to enjoy her company. She was unnervingly smarter than he was. So sometimes when she talked about something she was studying or researching, especially about medical enjutsu, he could only nod at appropriate moments. But it was still better than her pestering him for dates. Sasaki didn't like the feeling in his stomach when he thought of his pink-haired teammate fawning and smiling sweetly at his older brother. He wasn't sure if it had to do with his slight minuscule, possibly their feelings he was slowly developing for her, or if it was because of the unsettling reality that most girls seem to only see him as an Uchiha or Itachi's little brother and not as Sasaki. The individual Sakura was supposed to be the exception to the rule. She saw him at his worst, at his weakest. He had to acknowledge the fact that she truly cared for him, even willing to put herself in harm's way for him, something he only ever thought his family or even Naruto would ever do. The warm feeling in his chest he got when he thought about her wasn't something he wanted anyone else to feel when they thought about her. Besides the chance that Sakura may be developing feelings for Itachi, Sasuke didn't want them alone together because it made it easier for Itachi to get information out of her. Information regarding a certain incident, the other day that he didn't want anyone to find out about. Sasaki knew that Itachi already had suspicions that something had happened in the Haruno household. Even now, Sasaki felt shame at not being able to hide how flustered and confused he was at waking up, limbs wrapped around Sakura. She was soft and smelled like something floral and fresh linens. When Sasaki was in the backyard walking amongst the sheets his mother had hung on the clothesline to dry, his ears burned red from the memory of clinging onto her like she was his old stuffed dinosaur toy. Sasaki thought he was good at hiding how he felt, adopting the impassive mask he had been working on for a while. It worked well with his mother and father when he did get a chance to see his father, usually at meal times. Itachi was an entirely different case. He seemed to know exactly what Sasaki was thinking or feeling. There was not much he could hide from his older brother, and Sasuke didn't like the gleam in Itachi's eyes when he caught him bumbling around the hung laundry. Itachi was most likely going to be able to find a way to worm anything out of Sakura. Sakura was smart, but a terrible liar, and most likely would snap under Itachi's stare or something and give him the information he wanted. That Itachi could just smile at her, which would charm her little fangirl heart, and she would do anything he asked, like give up any information that could potentially be used to tease and torment Sasaki. Sasaki felt nauseous just thinking about that. He was pretty sure his queasy stomach had more to do with picturing pretty blushes and jade eyes quivering in adoration at his older brother of all people, than the sickeningly sweet smell that wafted about the store his mother just walked into. Irish Seamus. A deep bass voice shouted out, making Sasaki jump at the loudness. Looking up at the man behind the counter, it took every ounce of control. Sasaki had to not let his jaw drop. Is that supposed to be a starfish or something? A big burly man with dull pink hair, almost a mauve color, beamed at his store's guests from behind a display case loaded with different pastries. His hair was fashioned into 5 pointed spikes around his head in an odd, almost star-shaped pattern. How can I help you? He grinned, crossing his arms on top of the case and leaning forward. Something about his smile and the air about him reminded Sasaki of Nar. Unlike her son, Mikoto's jaw did drop. She was quick enough to catch it and smiled politely at the man. She pointed out to a different assortment of treats for him to box up. And when he turned his back to her, Mikoto's eyes bulged out as she recognized the shape of his hair. A cherry blossom. Mikoto bit her lip, trying to hold back any laughter from escaping past her lips. She eyed her son and noticed that his eyes had gone wide, too. Guess we know where the pink came from now, she whispered to him, startling him out of his reverie as he seemed heavily distracted by the spectacle in front of him. Pink. Sasake's eyebrows furrowed in confusion and then snapped high up as it dawned on him who his mother could be referring to. Sasaki hadn't met the Haruno patriarch the other night due to him being away on a mission. The parent he and Naruto usually spoke to or met in passing with Sakura was Miyuki, Sakura's mother. And although she shared the same eye color with her daughter, she was a blonde. Why are we at the Haruno's bakery? And how have I not seen that ridiculous hairstyle around the village before? I just happened to like the sweets from here. Mikoto smiled sweetly at her son and then turning up the brightness of her smile just a little more, she turned to Sakura's father and said, "They're my favorite." I guess pink can be cute on boys, too, Mikoto thought, thinking about the high probability she could end up with a grandson instead of a granddaughter. An entire month went by, and Mikoto hadn't seen even one single strand of Sakura's pink hair. Sighing, Mikoto put away her family's groceries. She shuffled around her kitchen with sluggish steps. It was expected, but it still dimmed Mikoto's mood whenever another day passed, and she still didn't get a chance to even see the pink-haired girl. She missed spending time with her. Mikoto even had a hard time enjoying any sweets since they brought flashes of sweet smells that wafted around her kitchen in pleasant chatter. What's the punishment for kidnapping again? Jail, Mikoto, you will be put in jail. For a long time, Fugaku answered without looking up from his paper. He had come home to have lunch with Mikoto, but decided to read his newspaper instead since his usually peppy wife just kept mumbling to herself and sighing. And if you're talking about the Haruno child, I suggest against any attempts. According to your son, she's now smashing craters into the ground with her bare fists. For your safety, please refrain from any type of approach she may find threatening. Which son? I beg pardon. According to which son? Mikoto breathed out. She was also running low on patience these days. Fugaku put down his paper and raised an eyebrow at her. Sighing deeply, he answered her. Sasaki, he is the son. That's her teammate. Fugaku opened up his paper to peruse its contents again. Still just a teammate, Mikoto sighed inwardly. She knew they were only 14, but she was hoping her child would show some interest in the pretty pink girl. She couldn't help but dream of a future surrounded by beautiful babies with ebony locks and emerald eyes. She couldn't help but fantasize about how lovely a spring wedding would be. All fantasies that her youngest child was ruining. She didn't understand how he didn't see the charm his sweet teammate had. Mikoto. Fugaku's voice snapped her out of her daydream. You're doing it again. Need I remind you that the wedding march is a foreign custom? We are not residents of some far, far away land. Mikoto glared at the upward turn of her husband's lips. She knew he was only teasing her. He had caught her humming the tune the other day while working on her embroidery and would take any opportunity to remind her of it. Mikoto usually loved when she could make her stern-faced husband smile, but not when it was at her expense. I must head back to the office. Fugaku rose from the kitchen's low table and kissed his wife's temple. Mikoto smiled beatifically, enjoying the sweet affection her husband showered her with when they were in private. As she watched her husband leave, Mikoto wondered if maybe her youngest was more like his father than she originally believed, and she believed they were quite similar already. Maybe he was just more private about his feelings. She might have missed something. Oh, she hoped she missed something. Ino was creeping Sakura out. She had been giving her this wide misty-eyed smile for the past hour that they had been studying. It was really starting to freak her out. Pig. Sakura closed her eyes and rubbed her eyebrows with her thumb and index finger. I thought you were interested in becoming a medic nin. You haven't been studying at all. You really expect me to focus on learning anatomy after seeing you and the Uchiha Sasaki being all chummy. You're reading too much into things like usual. Sakura rolled her eyes and went back to her reading. She wasn't going to entertain Ino's latest musings. He was just being polite. He helped carry these books here because that's something teammates do for each other. Sakura had bumped into Sasaki on her way to Ino's house to help her study. Ino became interested in medical enjutsu after a mission Team 10 and the remaining members of Team 7 had been on. She was slightly jealous of Sakura's new skills and refused to be left behind and decided to study as well. She was slightly put off by the fact that she was Sakura's junior, but was thrilled by the fact that it was something they could train for together. But Ino wasn't interested in learning about the human body right now. She was more interested in learning about the status of Sakura's relationship with Sasaki. She might have made a bet with Naruto before he left that the two of them would start dating before he came back. Nar didn't think it was possible, claiming Sasaki was clueless when it came to anything about girls. Ino was irritated at how easily Naruto could say that about someone else and not realize he was just as bad. Yeah, right. Shikamaru helps you out all of the time and I'm not accusing you two of being chummy. That bum does things for me so that I'll shut up and stop bothering him and you know it. Ino rolled her eyes. Sakura was making her do that a lot lately. Enough of this. We need a break. Let's go to a cafe. We can pick up some books from the bookstore so I can have my own on our way back. Ino added after Sakura frowned at her, sighing. Sakura gave in to Ino. Mentally, she promised there would be a tougher study plan when they got back. Ino was brilliant and usually focused, but was so easily distracted when she wanted girl talk. Sakura wished there really was something to talk about. There was some changes to her relationship with Sasaki, but it wasn't much, and definitely wasn't leading to the type of relationship she wished they would have. But although it wasn't of the romantic nature, the few changes did make her quite happy. Sakura spent most of her time training with Sun or working at the hospital. She loved that she found something she was good at, and training gave her a sort of satisfaction that it had never done before. She looked forward to the grueling work, knowing that she was catching up to her teammates. Because she was busy apprenticing with Tsunade, Sakura rarely got a chance to train with Kakashi and Sasaki. She mainly saw them when she joined them on missions or when they came to report to the Hokage. She cherished the time she did get to spend with them, especially now that Sasaki seemed more intent on listening to her chatter. He seemed to be interested in what was going on with her life now that she wasn't around as much. Sasaki would ask her questions about medical enjutsu, a topic Sakura loved to discuss. Sakura's favorite moments were when he would walk with her whenever they were heading toward the same direction. It wasn't much, but Sakura was content. She could easily say that they were friends, and she was happy with that. For now, oh, perfect. Ino pulled a book from a shelf. I thought they were all like those heavy, dusty tomes you lug around all of the time. They're not that heavy. Not all of us have monster strength. Ino rolled her eyes again. She should get a counter to figure out how often she was doing that now. You probably use chakra as a boost to carry all of those around. Yeah. Sakura waved a hand at her and shuffled along to other shelves. Oh, excuse me. Sakura maneuvered around a pale boy with inky black hair and eyes that gave her a strange smile. Unnerved by his odd smile, Sakura smiled back nervously before browsing the shelf again. Was that Anchia? Ino whispered, shielding her face from the stranger with her book. He looks a little bit like Sasaki _ I don't think so. He didn't have the clan's crest on any of his clothing. He was so cute, Ino squealed. Sakura rolled her eyes and shook her head. She hooked her arm with Ino's and dragged her away. Come on, we're going to be late for training. Sometimes when it was too quiet, Sasaki missed his blonde idiot friend. He missed brawling with Nar and getting into pointless arguments. Sasaki admired his older brother greatly, but there was something missing in their relationship that he found in Naruto. Sasaki loved Itachi and would always look up to him, but sometimes he was too much of a big brother to be his friend. Exhausted from training, Sasaki lied down in the grass field of the training ground and pulled a folded-up piece of frog-printed paper out of his pocket. He scoffed at the greeting. Nar always started with an insulting name. Bastard. Why don't you write more? Gods, you suck. Why can't you be more like Sakura-chan? She writes me at least 3 pages and her writing is tiny. I thought your writing would be better than your talking, but just barely. I can't believe you actually wrote HN in your last letter. You were just with me, right? Right. Sasaki rolled his eyes. It really was too easy to mess with the _ even when he was far away. Well, whatever. Sakura-chan says, you guys are thinking about taking the next Shunin exam in Suna. I should be back by then. It's not for another 9 months, right? Don't you guys dare take the exam without me. You better not get promoted without me. Got it, jerk. I'm training really hard. I'm sure I'm way stronger than you now. So, don't take the exam until I get back. You're going to need me in case you get in trouble again. Speaking of soccer, Aiken, you guys aren't smooching during training now that I'm not around, are you? No smooching when I get back. I don't want to see that. Gross. Sasake's eye twitched. He had no clue where Naruto got the idea that there was anything going on with him and Sakura. Before Naruto had left, he had insinuated that he thought something was going on by giving him weird smiles and waggling his eyebrows whenever he saw them standing too close to each other. He only stood close to her in the case that he needed to protect her from something. It was like a preemptive defensive move. That was all. I bet she's getting really pretty now. I asked her to take a picture of you guys and send it with her next letter, but I don't think she'll do it. Can you do it? I miss you guys. Well, I miss Sakura-chan more than you, of course. Can't wait to spar when I get back. Nar peas. Sakura-chan might have mentioned something about Hinata-chan growing her hair out. Maybe you could get a picture of her for me. I'm just curious as to why Sakura made a big deal about it. Of course. So, please. He's such an idiot, Sasaki mumbled and folded up his letter and stuffed it in his pocket again like he was going to go take a picture of Haga of all people. Why couldn't he just ask her directly? Sasaki knew he was in correspondence with her. A random toad had popped on her head carrying a scroll when he saw her walking with her team on his way to the training fields. Sasaki sat cross-legged and forming his hands into fists. He touched their knuckles together and tried to make his mind blank and focus only on his breathing. He was able to get nice and relaxed, but a cheerful voice broke through his meditative state. Was that a love letter, shrimp? Shui plopped down on the ground next to his baby cousin. Sasaki looked up beyond him and saw Itachi and Izumi approaching from a distance. He had shone over to get a head start on messing with Sasaki. It's just a letter from my teammate. Oh, the little cutie. It's not from Sakura, Sasaki said through gritted teeth, eye twitching. Shui wasn't the only cousin of his to have mentioned how cute she was, and it was starting to bug him. Who said anything about Sakura-chan? You have two teammates, don't you? Shui teased. He crawled up Sasuke's neck. I would only assume you wouldn't call someone that perpetually smells like Ramina cutie. Plus, he's a guy, Sasaki replied hotly. Gender isn't important. Shui waved his hand to signal the end of the conversation as Tu and Itachi reached them. Were you meditating? Itachi asked as he joined them on the ground. Izumi followed, tucking her legs underneath her bottom and leaning against Itachi's back. I was trying to, Sasaki mumbled, shooting a glare at Shui. Although Sasaki had no wish to use the cursed seal Orochimaru branded him with, it still caused some discomfort and irritation. Kakashi had sealed it, but Sasaki had to be determined not to use it. So far, everything was fine, except the slight discomfort every now and then. Itachi was trying to find a way to get rid of it completely. So far, their best bet was to capture Orochimaru and get information on removing the seal, but the Snake Sun proved to be much more elusive than the Uchiha had originally thought. So, how is Nar? Itachi leaned back, pushing against Izumi, causing her to fold inward on herself. She protested and begged Shisui for help. He laughed at her discomfort before pulling her away into his lap and confining her in a playful headlock. He's fine. He wants Sakura and I to wait for him before we take the Chunin exam. Sasaki chose to ignore the older teens. Playful flirting. It was starting to get harder for him to tell who was dating who among the three of them. He heard rumors from the older teens in the clan that Izumi was Itachi's girlfriend, but Sasuke couldn't really tell since the two of them were always with Shui. Don't you want to wait for your teammate Sasuke _ Izumi was now attached to Shu's arm. This is what made it hard for Sasuke to believe she was dating Itachi. If Sakura did that with Naruto, he wouldn't have been comfortable with that. Wait, what? I would rather enter the exam with my squad, but if the loser isn't back in time, we're going to have to take on another member. You don't need to rush and become a Chunin, Sasaki. Itachi tried to reason with his brother. Sasaki frowned at his brother and started to pluck the grass in irritation. He was already far behind his older brother, who had made Ambu at 11. Sasaki was a prodigy in his own right, but he still remained in Itachi's shadow. He just wanted to become a Chunin and enter the Konoha police force while working his way to Jonin. It was too bad he couldn't enter the Chunin exams on his own without a team like Itachi had. He wouldn't have to wait for Naruto or Sakura to be ready. But nonetheless, Sasuke knew it would be to his advantage to at least wait for Sakura because there would be a capable medic nin teamed up with him. I can't join the police force without becoming a Chunin first, Sasaki mumbled. He tried to ease his breathing to cool his irritation. When his mood spiked, he would sometimes feel a sharp pain where his cursed seal was located. Izumi started giggling, which didn't help his mood. What's so funny? I just realized that you want to be a police officer, and Sakura-chan wants to be a doctor. That's kind of cute, I explained, which caused Shui to snicker. More like kinky. It just screams uniform fetish, Shui joked, earning him a punch on the arm from Izumi. I gotta go, Sasaki said quickly and rose to his feet to walk away. Why was he surrounded by perverts? First Naruto and Kakashi, and now even his own relatives. What? No request for a spar today? Itachi asked pleasantly. He had let Izumi and Shisui mess with Sasaki today, but he couldn't resist teasing his brother a little. Or would you rather save your energy for your new sparring partner? Must be fun dodging chakra-infused fists. Not what I would call a good date activity, though. Itachi jumped up from the ground, dodging one of Sasuke's shuriken. It really was too easy to mess with Sasaki. All he had to do was allude to a certain pink-haired kunoichi to get his little brother all flustered. It took a while for Haruno Miyuki to become accustomed to receiving attention from someone from such prestigious a clan as the Uchiha. But Uchiha Mikoto was such a kind-hearted woman, she couldn't resist her attempts to befriend her. Mikoto was so humble and down-to-earth that sometimes it was easy to forget that she was the wife of a clan head. It really is quite beautiful, but we cannot accept such an expensive kimono. Mikoto-san Mebuki tried to politely decline Mikoto's gift for her daughter. She knew that the Uchiha woman had a soft spot for her daughter, but there really was no reason for her to buy expensive gifts for Sakura. Mikoto calmly took a sip from her tea and gave her a sweet smile, the one she used on her own husband and children when she wanted them to do something. The gift wasn't completely from the goodness of her heart since she was gifting it partially because she wanted a chance to see Sakura and a kimono would be a nice sight, but also because she was hoping that Sakura would wear it in the near future for a special occasion, possibly involving the Uchihas. Oh, please do accept it. I was purchasing fabric for a kimono of my own and couldn't resist when I noticed that this particular shade of green and the gold detailing would look magnificently on Sakura-Aiken. It was true. Mikoto was mesmerized when she noticed the pale green was almost an exact match for the color of Sakura's eyes and the gold trim reminded her of the gold flecks in them. Besides, every girl should have a kimono handy. Mikoto tried to reason. You never know when an occasion may call for one. Sakura-chan is the apprentice of the Godam and may need to dress accordingly when they meet diplomats. Or maybe she would attend a wedding or an OMI. Omiyuki laughed heartily. I'm sorry, Mikoto-san. I don't mean to laugh, but we're a small civilian clan, so we don't usually set up our children on omiyas. Also, Sakura is only 14. Even if she agreed to have an omi, we wouldn't propose the idea until she was at least 16. 16. Mikoto was a little shocked. In larger clans like the Uchiha, partners were found as early as 13. Itachi was a slight exception even though he was the future clan head because it was believed he was dating Izumi, a distant cousin that Mikoto approved of despite the fact that her father wasn't an Uchiha. Fugaku didn't interfere. Powerful man as he was because his wife's temper was not to be messed with. Sasaki was excluded only because Mikoto had her heart set on Haruno Sakura and insisted that her husband decline any requests from the clan elders for Sasaki to have omiyas with Uchiha girls of their choosing. It's fascinating how different our families are, Mebuyuki said cheerfully. She ran a hand over the silk of the green kimono. Her daughter really would look charming in it. I will hold on to this and let Sakura decide whether to accept it or not. She probably will knowing it would please you. She likes you so much. Will she be home soon? I would love to see her try it on. I'm not sure. Miyuki sighed. She's always training nowadays. It's nice that she has something she loves to do, but sometimes I wish she would be content with her shinobi rank as it isn't just pursue a career as a doctor. We barely see her. I went through the same thing with my boys. Itachi's always been independent and an introvert and Sasake's always wanted to be like his brother and is always trying hard to earn approval from his father. So, he's off to train all of the time. They're so uncute. Mikoto checked the charming little cuckoo clock on the wall of Miyuki's kitchen. It was getting pretty late in the day. Sighing, she rose from the table and bowed politely. I must be off. Let's have tea again on Friday. Sure, of course. May got up to see her off. Maybe I can convince Sakura to join us. I swear I only see her as she drags herself into shower and sleep lately. She owes me some of her time. I am her mother. Mikoto had to fight the urge to embrace the woman. It really had been so long since she last saw the pink-haired girl. The sooner she could get her son and Sakura married, the better. Then she would be able to see her all of the time around the compound and when she invited them over for family meals. I just need to wait 2 more years, Mikoto thought to herself. 2 more years and that's just for an engagement. Mikoto sighed and made her way down the street, trying not to let her mood dim even further. In her days, she almost missed the flash of pink ducking under the flaps of a food stand. Mikoto couldn't believe her luck and approached the ramen stand, hoping to be able to have some conversation with Sakura. She was about to lift the flap to enter when she heard her youngest son's voice. I don't understand why we eat here when the Dobi isn't here. Nar would appreciate it if we came here. Doesn't it feel like he's still around? It smells like he's still around and he's not dead. We don't have to come to Ikyaku's like if it's in his memory. Fine. I just wanted ramen. Then Mikoto backpedaled away from the small shop and headed back toward the Uchiha compound. She smiled even more brilliantly than usual whenever someone greeted her. Progress. Mikoto would say Sasaki was quite talented and could do just about anything he tried perfectly. Cooking, however, was not one of those things. Sasaki had never had to cook for himself. His mother made all of his meals, and when his parents had to go away on clan business or the like, Itachi took over and cooked their meals. Itachi was an odd one, too. He could prepare elaborate meals, but don't ask him to cook eggs. He got oddly intense when it came to eggs. Because Sasaki had never cooked before, Mikoto was shocked to find him in her kitchen trying to operate the rice cooker. What are you doing with my rice cooker? Mikoto shuffled around him, examining the ingredients he had lying around the counter. Nori, salmon, umabashi, are you going to make ani? Mikoto picked up a pickled plum and popped it into her mouth. She raised an eyebrow at her son. This is sweet. I was in the mood for it, Sasaki mumbled. How hard can making a few rice balls be? Uh-huh. Mikoto crossed her arms and looked at him skeptically. And you just happen to be in the mood to use my cherry blossom patterned bento box. I just grabbed the wrong one, Sasaki replied calmly, pulling out a black wooden bento box with an Uchiha pattern. He measured out the rice and stared at the cup. Mikoto watched him for a moment, just staring at the rice before he turned to her and mumbled, "Can you help me? I don't want to make something gross." Beaming at him, Mikoto grabbed her apron from its hook on the wall and put it on. As they moved around the kitchen, Mikoto was reminded of how he would help out by handing her things she needed when he was younger. He was so cute when he was 6. Mikoto peeked at him through her long dark lashes and was startled for a moment with the realization that her baby was now about the same height as her. In a few years, he would be looking down at her instead of at eye level. Kasana's voice broke her out of her nostalgia-induced daze. I like onigiri, but I don't think just onigiri makes a substantial meal. I mean, like nutrients and stuff. It's okay for now. Mikoto gave him an encouraging smile as she helped him pack the rice balls neatly. I'll teach you how to prepare other stuff another time, but she should be fine with rice balls. It's a quick meal, and her schedule is pretty hectic. Yeah, Sashake nodded. There was a short pause before he turned to his mother wide-eyed and ears red. This is for me. Of course it is. Mikoto smiled slightly and handed him the packed bento. She pushed him out the side door and told him she would clean up. He's just too cute. Once upon a time, if you asked Sasaki, he would tell you that Haruno Sakura was lazy and didn't have her priorities straight. Now he would tell you she was a workaholic and still didn't have her priorities straight. Oi. Sasaki raised an eyebrow at the lump of blankets piled on the bed in a room that was supposed to have been empty. He sighed in the part of the lump he hoped was a shoulder. A tiny groan came from the lump. It shuffled and then let out a yawn. Legs and arms stretching out of the cocoon of blankets. Sakura flipped over on her back and peered up sleepily through pink lashes. Sasaki, ah. Sasaki sat on the edge of the bed. Sakura stretched one more time, revealing a sliver of skin from where her red top met her medic skirt. Sasaki quickly averted his eyes before she caught him staring. Instead of napping in the hospital, why don't you just go home? How about no? Sakura narrowed her eyes at him before continuing to stretch out her limbs. She stretched until she heard some joints pop and then rolled her head, stretching out her neck. Have you eaten yet today? Sasaki matched her glare with one of his own. Almost 2 months into her training, Sasaki recognized a pattern. Sakura would train and study and work at the hospital and wouldn't rest properly. He hadn't noticed at first because he was so focused on his own training. But after trying to seek Sakura out for team training sessions, he realized how busy her days actually were. And yet, she still insisted on making time to train with him. Now, almost a year after her training started, it was quite obvious that the girl was a workaholic and didn't know how to take care of herself. Yes, liar. Yamanaka says otherwise. Sakura's stomach growled loudly and her face flushed pink. Your body says otherwise. When was the last time you ate dinner? Sakura huffed. I definitely had dinner. Sasaki stared blankly at her, and Sakura felt the heat on her face rise even more. Usually, she felt butterflies when Sasaki stared at her so intensely. But at the moment, there was only judgment in his eyes, and he was clearly thinking that she was you don't believe me, do you? I think it's already been mentioned that you suck at lying, and you didn't exactly have that much confidence in your answer. Sasaki rolled his eyes and handed her the bento box he had brought for her. It doesn't matter. My mother made this for you. Oh, thank her for me. Sakura excitedly pulled the knot of the handkerchief to reveal the Uchiha patterned bento box. Sakura blinked at the pattern and wondered why there was a different box than usual. Smiling sweetly, she turned to Sasaki and said, and thank you for bringing this here. Sasaki nodded at her, not trusting his voice. His heart had started to beat at a faster tempo. He could feel the heat rising up his neck to his ears. Sakura's smile caused warmth to fill his chest, but it was her eyes that always made him feel out of sorts. Although still a little too large for her face, the green, way too bright green of her eyes made his stomach form knots. There was just way too much emotion in them, and the adoration in them made his stomach go airy lately. Onigiri Sakura was a little surprised. Mikoto had a habit of making her elaborate and adorable bentos, never failing to add rabbit-shaped apple slices. Onigiri-filled box was a little plain for the Uchiha matriarch. You like umabashi, right? Sasaki asked nonchalantly. Yes. Sakura replied a little confused. But Mikoto-san doesn't know that. But if they're the sweet kind, I guess that would make sense. Sakura stared at the box for a moment. It was odd that it wasn't the usual cherry blossom motif in plain. Shrugging the abnormality off, she held up the box to Sasaki. Want one? Sasaki stared at her with an impassive look on his face before grabbing one. He noticed Sakura just watching him and called out her name. Sakura. Yi. Sakura's answer was cut off when a rice ball was placed into her open mouth. Her eyebrows shot up in surprise and she looked up with wide eyes at Sasaki. Eat there for you. Sakura glared at him but grabbed the rice ball and chewed and swallowed what was in her mouth. She continued to eat as they sat there in silence. After a while, Sakura noticed that Sasaki was staring at her face. You don't have to watch me. I'm eating. See. Sasaki blinked out of his daze and scowled. He pushed off the bed and crossed his arms in front of his chest. He didn't mean to get caught, but when Sakura was eating, he was reminded of an odd comment Yamanaka had made about Sakura eating cutely when they all went to a tea house while on a mission. Sakura's round cheeks would puff out, and Sasaki guessed she sort of looked pretty when she ate happily. Sasaki couldn't help but note the differences in her appearance. Sakura no longer wore makeup like she had only 2 years back, and the green nail polish she usually wore was missing. And her hair, she grew her hair out from the chop job she had gotten in the Forest of Death, but she no longer wore it long, trimming it so it never reached her shoulders. Sasaki kind of preferred her hair short. It was less distracting when a long sheet of it wasn't swaying back and forth down her back. Not that being short stopped it from being distracting. It didn't matter what length it was. It was still its unique pink shade and looked silky. Was silky. Izumi had a habit of playing with Sakura's hair and commenting on it. You need to go home earlier today and rest. Sasaki reprimanded her. We have training tomorrow. We're getting that new member. Yeah, Sakura said sadly. The Chunin exams in Suna were 3 months away, and it didn't seem like Naruto would be back in time. Sakura had hoped he would be back before her 15th birthday, but it looked like he was going to miss that as well. It was highly unlikely that he would be back in a week to celebrate. It's not like he's being replaced. We'll still be Team 7 when he comes back. There's no getting rid of that idiot, Sasaki said after a beat. Sakura's shoulders had slumped, and although she was no longer the crybaby she was at 12, he still panicked a bit when he thought she might burst into tears. He was okay handling her when she was upset, but crying still made him freeze up. Sakura beamed and packed up the bento box. I'll wash this and return it later. But for now, you got to go. I have to get back to my shift. Do you ever take a break? I do. You interrupted my break, remember? Whatever. Go home early. Sasaki left feeling like that was going to be a recurring discussion for them. Itachi had a pleasant disposition, but he couldn't avoid the intimidating aura that radiated off of him. It was advantageous at times, but this was not one of those moments. It seemed like nothing intimidated the god eye. Do I even want to know how you got that information? San crossed her arms under her chest and narrowed her eyes at Itachi. Itachi just smiled at the Hokage. Sununade raised her eyebrow at the ice in his smile. I believe I do have access to information pertaining to former members of Root. Itachi replied. Although the organization no longer existed after the death of Shimura Danzo 7 years ago, Itachi still held distrust toward anyone or anything that had been affiliated with Root. It was a bias that he could not help toward anything that Danzo had touched. He had strong negative feelings after the man had tried to steal Shiwi's eyes. In the case of this particular person, he had not completed his Root training, so he doesn't exactly count as a Root member. Shuffled papers around and pulled out a folder. The orphans found under Shimura's care were placed in an orphanage and allowed to become Konoha shinobi if they so desired. Now that the Chunin exams are approaching, many of them would like a chance to rise in ranks. You must understand my discomfort with placing one of them in my younger brother's team. Itachi's mouth was set in a tight grim line. No changes will be made to this lineup, Itachi Sanunade said firmly. There are no missions for you at the moment, so for now, you are dismissed. Itachi bowed and left, still feeling unsettled. Sasaki tried to keep his eye from twitching as he avoided looking at his mother throughout dinner. He could feel her eyes on him as he ate silently across from her. He could almost feel Itachi's sly smile from his right side. I noticed that you hadn't brought the bento box back, Sasu-chan. Mikoto finally spoke up. You haven't lost it on the training grounds, right? I must have forgotten it, Sasaki replied nonchalantly. I will retrieve it tomorrow. Did you mean this box? Oka-san. Sasaki tensed up at the sound of his brother's soft voice. There was an undertone of amusement that Sasuke found unnerving. Itachi placed the bento box on the low kitchen table. Where he was hiding it, Sasaki had no clue. Sakura-chan returned it to me after my appointment today. Sakura-chan. Sasaki was used to hearing his brother calling her by her family name or with a more formal honorific, but never so intimately. Did she scold you for not wearing your glasses during your off time? Mikoto asked her eldest with a slight reprimand. His vision was suffering and at first he dealt with it on his own until Tsunade demanded he get his eyes checked frequently. So far he only let the Hokage or Sakura go anywhere near his eyes. Sakura-chan has a sixth sense for these things. I showed up with my glasses and I was still scolded before my examination. The lecture got worse after she found out how much damage I had sustained between checkups. Good for her, Mikoto sniffed. She was proud of Sakura, but also upset with Itachi. Shinobi usually avoided having to go to the hospital, but it seemed that her family was worse than others when it involved doctor visits. My question is, Itachi segued away from the conversation pertaining to his health. Why did Sakura-chan have it? The room went quiet and Sasaki looked down at his bowl of rice. Now it felt like he could literally feel the burn from the stares of his family members. His father, who had been quiet the entire meal, after having been sternly lectured about doing paperwork during meal times, took advantage of the situation and reached for a folder he had hidden under the table. May I be excused? Sasaki asked, feeling suffocated by his mother and brother's questioning looks. Not until you have finished your meal. Mikoto gave him a smile saturated with saccharin. You need the nutrients and stuff. Oh my gods. Sasake's face fell into his hands, trying to hide how flustered he looked. Elbows off of your mother's table, Sasaki. Fugaku sipped his green tea. He acted as though he hadn't heard a thing and continued to eat. I should just Chidori myself and end this right now. Sasaki groaned inwardly. Or Itachi, he did that on purpose. You did good, little brother, Itachi said pleasantly. Lunch dates are much better than sparring ones. I'm going to barbecue him in his sleep tonight. Sasaki glared at his brother, unaware of the way his mother had clasped her hands together in front of her chest and the glimmer in her eyes. Dates. Fugaku raised an eyebrow and dropped his paperwork in his lap. He had perked up when heard the word. Who is dating? I'm finished. Sasaki hopped up and stormed away from the kitchen. Dinner was lovely. Oka-san Itachi complimented his mother, holding back a smirk. Sometimes Sasaki made it too easy. He'd probably be worse after a real date. Itachi laughed inwardly. Gods, he needs help. Sweet floral scents drifting with the gentle spring breeze through the Uchiha main house made for a lazy evening. A perfect setting for a catnap on the Inawa, which is exactly what Itachi caught his younger brother doing. Literally, Sasaki was lying on the edge of the Ingawa, one leg hanging over the edge. Two brown and black patched cats laid curled by his hip and a smaller white one on his chest. Cats always seemed to find Sasaki, even in the Uchiha compound. He seemed to have an affinity for them. That's adorable. Itachi kicked Sasuke's leg just hard enough to shock him awake. Sasaki sat up, clutching the white kitten to his chest. The other two scattered after the rude awakening. Oka-sanan and Otis-sanan wouldn't be too happy catching you sleeping out here again. Sasaki glared at his brother. It was Itachi's fault he picked up the habit of sleeping out on the Ingawa when the weather was pleasant. He had even ditched him to let him get caught by his parents in the morning after the first night he suggested it. So who's this guy? Itachi reached over to pet the little kitten. The kitten hissed at his hand, taking him aback. Although Itachi was closer to crows, all animals loved him, including cats. Her name is Huey. Sasaki lightly scratched under the kitten's chin and she purred, pushing her face against his hand. I found her under the Ingawa a while back, and she's been following me around since. Shaking off the fact that his younger brother had successfully kept a cat a secret from his family for so long, Itachi took another look at the cat's tiny face. Above the pinkest nose he's ever seen were a pair of stunning jade eyes. That explained the name. Oh-san will not let you keep this cat. Itachi warned. Although Sasaki played with cats he came across and had once tried to sneak a box of kittens into the compound at the age of 7, Sasaki never actually went as far as naming any of them. Their father wouldn't let them keep pets, so he never named them so he wouldn't get attached. I'm not going to, Sasuke mumbled. I'm giving her away as a gift. Itachi blinked at that. It wasn't that Sasaki wasn't capable of giving gifts. It was just that Itachi didn't think there was anyone outside of their immediate family that Sasaki would trust enough to care for a living thing. You're back early from your mission. Although had claimed not to have a mission for Itachi, he received a summons the next day and was leaving the village right before Sasaki was to meet his new teammate. It was simple. So, how is your new teammate? Itachi asked. He sat down on the Ingawa and tried to catch Hazui's interest. She eyed his palm and then turned her head into Sasuke's stomach. He's too attached to you. Honestly, Sasaki sighed and lied back on the Enga, one arm bent behind his head and the other one holding onto Huey. There was something unsettling about the smile on the pale boy in front of him that made Sasuke's jaw clench. There was nothing about that smile that told him the boy before him was trustworthy. This is Sai. Kakashi introduced him. He will be a part of Team Kakashi for the Chunin exams coming up. Sigh. Sasaki raised his eyebrow. He had his arms crossed in front of his chest and stood guarded. Just sigh. No family name. Not everyone comes from such an extinguished clan. Princess Chicken. Sai spoke in a monotone, the smile still on his face. Sakura gasped and Kakashi coughed, hiding his shock. Did you mean to style your hair like that? What did you just call me? Sasaki asked through gritted teeth. He stepped up to Sai, standing an inch away from his face. Sorry, princess. I don't swing that way. Sai continued to smile even as Sasaki grabbed the front of his asymmetrical sleeved Hyler shirt. Sasake's eyes widened at the statement and his jaw clenched even harder. Relax, Sakura whispered in Sasake's ear. She brought a hand to his elbow and a green glow emitted from her hand. You need to calm down. Sasaki was overcome with a soothing sensation sweeping across his body. His brain tingled with a pleasant sensation, and he released his hold on Sai. Sakura's chakra was always gentle and warm. It was so calming to bask in its presence. We're going to need to get along, Sakura told him gently before removing her hand. Sasaki lamented the loss of the soothing chakra, but he stepped back from Sai. Don't let him frustrate you. It's not worth it. Sasaki looked down at Sakura and was reminded of the fear in her eyes when he lost control over 2 years ago. Guilt weighed heavy in his stomach. He gave her a nod and she smiled up at him sweetly. I'm Haruno Sakura. Sakura introduced herself, holding her hand out to Sai and giving him a forced smile. She wasn't completely on board with having a new teammate, but she was going to make the best of it. It's nice to meet you. What an ugly smile. Sai took her hand, smiling his creepy smile. That's nothing like the one you gave him. But I guess I can get along with a somewhat friendly hag. What? Sakura hissed, a vein on her forehead throbbing. Before Kakashi could stop her, she punched Sai across the face, sending him 20 feet across the clearing. Let's get along, huh? Sasaki smirked at Sakura, who ended up blushing and laughing nervously. He's okay skill-wise, but he pisses Sakura off a lot, Sasuke said with a scowl. There was a pause and he chuckled. It's fun watching her clear him straight across the training ground, though. What? You don't stand up for her? Itachi teased and Sasaki dead-panted. Sakura can more than handle him. Sasaki stood up and stretched. The kitten in his arms yawned, revealing tiny canines. I have to go put Hazui in my room before Otis comes home from the station. You still haven't told me who she's for, Itachi called after him. Sasaki just lazily waved his hand at him without looking back. I wonder. Sakura woke to the soft patting of a tiny paw on her face. A soft furry face rubbed against her forehead. I'm up heckin'. Sakura giggled. She had the kitten for 2 weeks now, and she had already adjusted to Sakura's schedule, always chirping for attention right before the alarm rang. Sakura rolled onto her back and stretched out her limbs. Another day of work followed by teamwork drills. She sighed. Sai was actually a great fit, and his combat skills made up for his terrible social skills. She couldn't help but feel disgruntled whenever she saw him. He wasn't Nar, and he always called her hag. Sakura tried to ignore it, but she had lost it when she had met Ino and started calling her beautiful. It didn't help that he was extremely observant and was always making comments that alluded to her feelings for Sasaki. Sakura was surprised to find someone with less tact than Naruto. Sakura could probably be more subtle, but it was kind of hard not to give Sasuke preferential treatment. She didn't like to be called out on it, especially in front of Sasaki. It wasn't like Sakura was being overly affectionate. Sure, she didn't pull her hand away from his skin as soon as she finished healing his wounds. Maybe she sat too closely during breaks. Was there really anything bad about that? Sakura was sure Sasaki would have said something about it if he thought she was crossing the line. It's none of Sai's business anyway. It really wasn't fair that he would comment on the way she smiled differently at Sasaki or was nicer to him, treating him as if he were special. Sakura didn't want Sasaki to be special. He just was. I just want as much time with him as I can get. She's late. Sai interrupted the awkward silence. He and Sasaki were waiting on Sakura at Training Ground 3. They weren't at that level of comfort where they could start training with a spar unless Kakashi or Sakura were there to act as referee. Sasaki was sure he would kill him one day if he didn't stop calling him princess. Thank you, Captain Obvious. Sasaki closed his eyes and tried to focus on meditating. You don't talk much, Sai continued on, not caring if Sasaki was trying to block him out. Although that's not necessarily true. You talked to her, too. Hag Sasaki opened his eyes to narrow them at Sai. What was he getting at? Of course, he talked to Sakura. They were teammates. You should seriously stop calling her that. And you smile at her. A nice gentle smile. I thought you were worse than I was at expressing emotions, but apparently you do know how to smile. Although Sai was sketching, he could still sense the shift in Sasuke's chakra. He had actually startled him with his statement. How would your parents feel about you slumming it with a village girl? Princess, don't speak as if you know my parents. Sasaki was getting annoyed, and I wouldn't exactly call hanging out with the disciple of the fifth Hokage slumming it. Not that it matters if she's the Gautam's apprentice or not. Sasaki saw the judgment in some of the elder members of his clan's faces when they saw Sakura. They took one look at the simple white circle on her back and turned their noses up at her. Despite the fact that she paid them no mind, Sasaki didn't care how they felt. She was one of his two best friends. Despite her temper, there was no one he knew that was kinder or more gentler than Sakura. Well, maybe Nar. He had a habit of attempting to befriend everyone he met. Hanging out, you say? Sasaki watched as Sai pulled out a book from his weapons pouch. He flipped it open and pointed at something on the page. Are you sure you're not participating in the ritual of courting? You escort her everywhere after we meet. You bring lunch to her workplace. You have a special smile you show only to her. There's a weird tension after she has touched you, even in an innocent manner such as for healing. You two are dating. Sai just barely missed getting hit with a Kaden. Sasaki had let him babble until he got to the part about tension. That struck a nerve with Sasaki. Sure, he leaned in a little too much into Sakura's touch during healing sessions, but he never had perverse thoughts about their medic Nin when she was doing her job. Are we sparring now? Sai asked, tilting his head as if confused, his smile still gracing his face with its oddness. He backflipped to dodge a wave of shuriken and pulled out his giant scroll. Okay, I guess we're sparring now. Mikoto came home from tea with Mebuki to find a pair of knee-high Nin sandals for small feet placed neatly next to her son's at the front entrance of her home. Recognizing who they belonged to, she quickly made her way to the area of her house where she could feel the gentle strum of Sakura's chakra almost masked by the stronger pulse of Sasake's chakra. Mikoto was about to call out to the teenagers until the sight before her stopped her in her tracks. Out on the enga with her back towards her sat Sakura with Sasaki lying down with his head in her lap. There was a green glow coming from the hand Sakura was using to touch her son. I really shouldn't heal you. Just to teach you a lesson, Sakura chided him. You shouldn't let idiots go you on. Sasaki let out a snort. I don't want to hear that from you. Sasaki had his eyes shut so he couldn't see his mother, but Mikoto could see him clearly, and she saw the way the corners of his mouth upturned into a gentle smile. It was small, but there was a warmth to it. You could have gone a little easier on him. Healing him almost exhausted me. Sakura finished healing. A cut on Sasuke's cheek. There was a very subtle movement, but Mikoto could have sworn that Sasaki was moving towards Sakura's touch, but it didn't. You don't waste chakra. Your control is perfect. Flirting. My baby is flirting. Mikoto felt heat pull into her cheeks and turned to head into her kitchen. There was something about what she just saw that made it seem like she shouldn't be around to witness it. Mikoto shuffled around her kitchen, pulling out items and ingredients for dinner. She tried to distract herself with the act of cooking, but her mind kept wandering to the scene she had just witnessed. She kept picturing the two of them in her mind with the pleasant aura radiating off of them. She kept picturing a white ring molding into an Uchiha. Sakura had hoped that Naruto would mature with the years spent traveling and training with Asani. She had hoped. She should have kept her expectations low. I go through a growth spurt and you're still taller than me. Nar complained. Sasaki just smirked at him and kept his hands in his pockets, holding himself all smugly. It's 2 centimeters. Why is he griping over 2 centimeters? At least he's not the shortest one anymore. Sakura rolled her eyes. She felt a tinge like a hypocrite since she and Ino had an argument over their height and weight the other day. Ino was a bit taller and curvier, which made Sakura weigh just a bit less. Sakura refused to believe it was due to starvation because she was constantly in work mode like Ino had scolded her. Sasaki and his mother made sure she had something to eat every day around lunchtime. You haven't changed a bit, Sakura. Aiken. Naruto pulled Sakura into a hug and swung her around. You're going to drop her, Sasaki reprimanded him, gently pulling Sakura out of his hold. Nar raised an eyebrow and gaped at his friend. There was something weird about him. What was weird about him? What's with the weird outfit? Nar questioned Sasaki. He was wearing a light gray shinobi uniform under a black flak vest. On the long sleeves of his top was the Uchiha crest to top of a 4-pointed star. An apron. You can't possibly have forgotten the police force uniform. Nar, Sakura sighed. She rubbed the area above her eyebrows in annoyance. You should recognize it the most. Not only is your best friend the son of the police chief, but you were taken into custody for vandalism how many times during our academy days? Who's hungry? I'm hungry. Naruto laughed sheepishly, rubbing the back of his neck. Let's get ramen. He's been in the village of all of 5 minutes, and he's already dragging us to Ikyaku. Sasaki grumbled to Sakura as they trailed a bit behind Nar. Their energetic friend looked ready to leave them behind. Not like you weren't going to treat him anyway, Sakura teased. She clasped her hands behind her back and hummed lightly as she walked. It was so good that all of her boys were home. As time went on, Sakura found herself even busier than ever. She was 16 now and practically worked full-time at the hospital and did research on poisons and antidotes. Ever since Sasaki joined the police force, Team Kakashi had pretty much stopped going on missions unless absolutely needed, and they barely trained as a team. Sai would have probably disappeared into the background had it not been for the two of them bonding with him during their Chunin exams. It also helped that Ino kept insisting on everyone getting together whenever possible and inviting him to everything. Sai was blunt and had no filter, so he made the rest of the Rookie 9 and Team Guy uncomfortable sometimes. But after a full year of knowing him, Sakura and Sasaki were somewhat used to him. I wanted to sit in the middle, jerk. Nar jabbed Sasuke's shoulder with a pair of chopsticks. You never let me sit in the middle. Whatever, loser. Just order your miso ramen. Sasaki ordered his and Sakura as usual at the stand. When the food came around, he took a pair of disposable chopsticks and broke them apart for her. Nar watched his friends and almost dropped his third bowl of ramen as it made its way to his mouth. There was a weird air about them as they ate their meal. Sakura was talking animatedly about something at the hospital, and Sasaki just watched her with a soft smile. It was starting to creep Naruto out. Slow down, Haruno. Sasaki chided Sakura and wiped broth off of her face with a napkin. You're going to get indigestion if you eat too quickly. Why are you eating so quickly? I left some work at the lab that I really want to get back to this afternoon. You're supposed to have this afternoon off. Sasaki reminded her, his voice heavy with annoyance. It will be really quick. I promise. Sakura clasped her hands in front of her chest and gave him a pout. Sasaki averted his gaze, the tips of his ears turning red. 1 hour, Sasaki grumbled. You get 1 hour. We'll pick you up in front of the hospital or I'll drag you out again. Of course, Sakura tipped her bowl back, careful not to drop any broth, and then jumped down from her stool. When she tried to pay for her meal, Sasaki stopped her. You paid last time. Fine, but you better let me pay for you next time we have dinner. Nar waited for Sakura to be long gone before turning to Sasuke who was eating his ramen with an impassive look on his face. What the hell was that? Nar shrieked, spitting broth everywhere. Sasaki punched him on the top of his head and told him to settle down. How can I settle down when you and Sakura-chan have started dating and no one told me anything? I don't have the money I owe Ino for losing the bet. We're not dating. Sasaki answered hoarsely, coming down from his coughing fit after swallowing broth down the wrong pipe. Nar had really caught him off guard. We're just friends. I see someone else has noticed the awkward tension between you and the hag. Princess, both Nar and Sasaki jumped at the sound of Sai joining in on their conversation. Neither one of them had noticed him sidle up to them and sit on the stool Sakura had used. We need to get you a bell, Sasaki said through gritted teeth. Sai had a habit of just showing up whenever. Sasaki was getting really good at sensing chakra signatures, and Sai still managed to sneak up on him in social situations. Who the hell are you? Nar narrowed his eyes in his suspicion. Sasaki rolled his eyes at him. He hadn't quit slurping his noodles as he started interrogating Sai. I'm Sai. Sai gave him his creepy smile, and Sasaki waited for the expected nickname. You must be the wonder. Yep, there it was. What did you call me? Sasaki finished up his meal, ignoring the bickering as though he weren't right in the middle of it. He sighed when he realized there was still 45 minutes before Sakura was to be picked up. 21. Itachi was 21 and he and I still weren't married and giving her grandbabies to spoil. Mikoto was beyond pissed. Ida-chan Oka-san Itachi smiled pleasantly at his mother. He and Izumi sat in respectful Caesar form across from his mother and father in their sitting room. Izumi kept her gaze down. She had seen her auntie upset before, but there was something far more frightening about the icy close-lipped smile she was presenting them at the moment. Chi-Yui Itachi bowed slightly toward his father, who looked just as uncomfortable as I felt. Fugaku had just wanted a calm and relaxing lunch with his wife. He hadn't expected to be ambushed into an informal meeting with his eldest son and his girlfriend. I think you know why we are all here. Mikoto began calmly. She slid a black leather folder across the table. On the front was the Uchiha crest. Itachi's jaw muscle twitch. It was an OMI folder. We wanted a Renee for you. Itachi just like your mother and I had. Fugaku took on the demeanor of a clan head. He dropped the unsettling feeling of being forced into having this conversation. You're an adult now. We held back the elders from setting up arranged marriage meetings because we believed that you and I were involved and in a serious relationship. We are in a serious relationship. Itachi countered. We just do not wish to marry or have the children desires yet. I would like to be a Junin instructor. Yumi informed her future in-laws. I would much rather be a teacher than a mother right now. Shui is quite the handful as it is. Itachi joked. Mikoto's face flushed crimson. Shi-chan is your cousin. Your older cousin. He is not supposed to be a handful for you to take care of. He's a police captain for goodness sake. We think of him as practice and so far we're not parent material. Itachi continued to tease his mother. Yumi had to hold back from giggling. But now that we are all up to date on the status of Mei and plans for the future, we must get going. I have a mission and I is getting her first gen in team today. We're not finished with this discussion, young man. Mikoto called after him. She slumped back. All energy gone. Fugaku rubbed her shoulders and she sighed, patting his hand. That went better than expected, to be honest. You were no help, dear husband. Mikoto stood up and grabbed the empty folder from the low table. The folder was merely an empty threat. We were being pushy and that doesn't work with Itachi. Fugaku sighed. He followed his wife into the kitchen, grateful that she had already prepared lunch. She must have also known that their meeting would not last long since she didn't worry about the food cooling. I suppose you're right. Mikoto joined her husband at the low table. She sighed inwardly. The son pushy could work on isn't even 18 yet. Not able to legally wed yet. Sasaki grimaced and scooted away from his snoring blonde friend. His head throbbed when he realized he would be the one to drag him home. Don't worry, Sasaki underscore. Sakura leaned against his arm on the other side of him, still awake but far from sober. I'll help you with Nar. Sure you will, lightweight. Sasaki smirked down at her when she pouted. Team Kakashi had met up with Team 10 and threw Nar a welcome home party. A few jokes at Sasake's expense due to his police force status didn't deter the teens from their plans to get involved in a little underage drinking. It sucks that Hinata couldn't come. She missed Naruto a lot. Sakura snuggled against Sasaki for warmth. He radiated heat all of the time. She was sure it was due to his fire chakra nature. She's so sheltered. If teammate came, they would have been too loud and we would have gotten caught. You mean Ka? Sakura giggled. Keeping track of Naruto had been enough for one night. Ah, Sasaki fell onto his back and stretched his arms over his head. He blinked up at the night sky. The training grounds were really the only place they could go to fool around without the adults finding out. Sasaki turned his head to the side and saw Sakura still sitting up. That wasn't right. He tugged on her arm until she fell back to lie next to him. Sakura squealed but scooted until she lied in the crook of Sasuke's arm. Warned Sakura sighed. Glad I can be your personal space heater. Sasaki scoffed. He was only teasing. He liked the tingly feeling that ran up the places where Sakura's body touched his, and the feeling only intensified when he was slightly inebriated. He wrapped an arm around her waist and pulled her closer so that his nose was buried in her hair. Over the years, Sakura's smell only changed slightly. She still smelled of something floral and fresh linens, but there was an undertone of something antiseptic, a scent she picked up from the hospital. Should we leave? Sasake's body tensed up.
Oh,
He
here
forgot
he is.
Sai was still awake. He sat up to see Sai smiling at him. Ino's head resting in his lap. Sasaki would comment, but he knew Sai would turn anything he said around on him. He also wasn't sure if Sai and Ino were dating or not. He seemed to listen to her more when it came to learning social cues. Completely forgot you were here, didn't you? Poor him. Ino smirked. Sakura flushed pink and waved her hand around the Hinata. That was flirting, right, beautiful. Yes, it was psychic. Well, I lost my buzz. Sasaki stood up quickly and grabbed Ino's leg. Willing to take him underscore, home now. You can't just drag him.
I think that nurse is beginning to like me.
Sakura chased after him and lifted Naruto up by his arms. Ino and Sai watched them leave the training grounds. I'm learning so much, beautiful. Sai smiled softly at Ino. His facial expressions were getting a lot better lately. But that wasn't right, was it? Sadly, no. Ino sighed and sat up, stretching her limbs. She hadn't actually drunk much so that she could keep an eye on her best friend and the Uchiha. Don't interrupt next time. It was getting good. I will try my best. Good. Now walk me home. What? No Guden night kiss. Shui appeared at Sasake's elbow. He had been on night patrol when he spotted his younger cousin outside the Haruno home. What's wrong with everyone? Sasaki scowled. She's my best friend. That's it. But she's so pretty. Shui teased. You really don't think about it. Pretty isn't all she is, underscore. Sasake's cheeks were a light hue of pink. He had been lying earlier about having lost his buzz. I wouldn't be struggling so much if she was only pretty. Come on, shrimp. Let's get you home. Shui threw his arm around Sasuke's shoulder. He could tell just how inebriated he was since Sasaki didn't shrug him off. I thought alcohol gave you courage. Shui shook his head and led his cousin back to the Uchiha compound. It woke Sakura up by walking up her back with heavy steps. Kazashi was spoiling her and the extra treats weren't helping the cat's weight. I'm up heckin'. Sakura groaned. She places a palm on her forehead and sent healing chakra to her head to ease the pain of her headache.
Mr. Big!
When the pain receded, Sakura turned over and flopped onto her back. Now that the headache was gone, all she needed to worry about was remembering last night. She remembered the smell of woods and of something like cinnamon. She remembered feeling warm and safe. She remembered the feeling of well-formed muscles pressed against her. Sakura blushed deeply and covered her face with her hands. She did it again. Sakura took advantage of Sasake's kindness and let him spoil her. She sighed to herself and rolled out of bed. She was just going to have to try harder today. We're just best friends, just friends. She chanted to herself as she got ready for the day. Sakura wanted to believe that there would be more between them. She wanted all of Sasuke's nice gestures to mean something more. But Sakura learned to believe. She knew it couldn't happen. Let's just be selfish one more day. Sakura whispered to herself. For now, I can pretend that she was the only girl that was confessing to Sasuke. Never wouldn't be a day when seeing Sasaki happy and smiling after was just a memory. After getting over the incident 4 years ago, Mikoto never thought she would have to deal with her youngest son's volatile mood again. Sasaki had been doing so well thanks to his teammates and his older brother. The cursed seal was nothing but a slight irritant for her family. Sasaki had been distant and his temper easily flared. It took a while to get him to behave like and be the boy he was before. It was easier then because she knew what was the problem. This time she had no clue. He went on a mission with his old genin team and then came back a week later brooding and refusing to talk to anyone in the family except for Itachi. And Itachi wasn't explaining anything to their parents. At least he's eating properly again, Mikoto murmured. Itachi had just brought a tray down from Sasuke's room. He gave his mother a small smile and then sighed. He's not in the house, by the way. Itachi took the dishes from his mother and washed them for her. He opted to leave via the window again. That's what I get for raising shinobi. Mikoto patted Itachi's arm. It was the one rule she gave up on having them follow when Sasaki was 14. Ida-chan, I shouldn't say anything until he's ready. Please, he's my son. Ida-chan, my youngest, my baby. Mikoto breathed. This had been going on a month, and she was tired. She tried to be firm, but neither Itachi nor Sasaki were talking. It didn't help that Kusaki wasn't as concerned as she was about her son's mood. As long as Sasaki was doing his work for the police force and completing missions exceptionally, he didn't think it was an issue. Itachi sighed and averted his eyes from his mother's gaze. Sasaki looked so much like her that it affected him greatly when his mother looked up at him with such a sad expression. It's likely that Sasaki will have my condition. I only know of Shui not being affected and I have never heard ready to make a complaint so I do not know how great you are. You don't mean Mikoto's eyes went wide and she covered her mouth with everyone who was close to it partially why he was so upset. Itachi cut her off. He was ashamed of having lost control of his emotions. I tried to explain to him how I had acquired the Manjikyo sharing, but I don't believe it helped him as much as I thought it would. Mikoto bit her lip to stop it from trembling. They almost lost Shui the year Itachi was 12. For a moment, it seemed that Shui had died, and it was enough for Itachi to gain the Manjikyo sharing. The event created a larger rift to form between the Uchiha clan and the village's council of elders. If not for the execution of Shimura Danzo, who knows what may have happened. But Ida-chan, who did he think had died? Naruto was sure that if it weren't for the Kyuubi and his ability to heal, he would surely have died by now. Between sparring matches with both Sasuke and Sakura, he was sustaining multiple injuries. It looked like neither one of them knew how to hold back when they were in a mood. Naruto had to remind them multiple times at the end of sparring matches that that was exactly what they were. Sparring matches, not fights to the death. Sakura-chan healed those ribs yesterday and you just had to go and break them again. Naruto grumbled as he lied flat on his back on the grassy knoll of the training ground too. They had to use a different training field than usual since he and Sakura had destroyed their usual field the day before. Speaking of Sakura-chan, she seems to be ready to forgive you for being a bipolar jackass. I thought I already told you we're not discussing it. Sasaki glared at his friend. Nar gave him an unimpressed look and then rolled his eyes. It's not like it was the first time any of us has gotten stabbed before. Stabbed. She was impaled. Sasaki hissed. She wasn't moving. I know. Nar exclaimed. He didn't want to start an argument. He just wanted his best friends to talk to each other again. I was there, too. I saw it happen. And guess what? She's fine. Sakura-chan is walking around very much alive, working at the hospital and everything. Naruto almost groaned aloud when Sasuke just turned away from him. Naruto was fine when Sasuke went all sulky and broody the first week they were back. But now that it was a month later, it was getting old. Team Kakashi minus their sensei had been assigned a simple retrieval mission. They just needed to pick up some rare herbs only found in Suna. The simple mission turned into an ambush that led Sakura into being stabbed through her abdomen and poisoned. Luckily, their team was close enough to Suna still that they were able to get her to a medical nin named Shio that Sakura had befriended on a previous trip to Suna. Naruto had been concerned for Sakura's well-being, but as soon as she was healed and able to punch him for being overbearing, everything went back to normal. Sai took Sakura's injury the easiest. His concern only lasted until she was healed. Sasaki, on the other hand, kept flopping between being overly concerned and also pissed off because of her recklessness. It's not like you aren't reckless either. Mr. Use myself with a human shield. Sasaki turned back around and opened his mouth to say something, but Naruto cut him off. It is so the same thing. We're all idiots that throw ourselves in front of attacks for each other. We have a problem, and I blame Kawa-sensei for it. Nar stood up and dusted himself off, only wincing a little bit from his injuries. He planned to see Sakura again. At first. Ramen. I'm tired of being the reasonable one and I'm hungry. I deserve some ramen. You're going to die by ramen. Like, that's possible. Nar rolled his eyes. Speaking of food, I bet Sakura-chan hasn't eaten dinner yet, and I bet she hasn't had lunch either. Someone hasn't been making sure that she eats proper meals. Someone should go check on her. Subtle. Real subtle. Sasaki rolled his eyes and walked away from Nar. He refused to feel guilty because he hadn't been bringing any bento boxes for Sakura. She was 17 and could feed herself. It wasn't his job to make her lunch, even though he had been doing it for the past few years. His part in her lunches would have remained a secret if it weren't for Nar bounding into his kitchen and catching him in the middle of preparing Sakura's bento. It took paying for several bowls of ramen to buy Naruto's silence. Just go check on her. Buy her dinner. You'll be back to making everyone uncomfortable with your awkward not an actual couple relationship in no time. Oh, you mean like you and Hyuga? Hey, Naruto's face flushed red. We're not like that, right? And you weren't muttering in your sleep about her glossy long hair during our last mission. You Sasaki. Sakura stared at the bouquet of gardenias on her desk and her eye twitched. Sai had dropped them off, a gift from Una, and she almost crushed them and threw them out. Although gardenias from a friend could just convey that the giver thought the receiver was lovely, Sakura knew what Ino was really trying to say. No longer interested in teasing her for being single and never kissed, Ino had moved on to making fun of Sakura's feelings for Sasaki, her secret love, which wasn't so secret. It's getting ridiculous. Forehead confess already. Sakura filed away her finished documents. It was yet another day that she had to stay late to finish paperwork. She was staying late more often now that there wasn't a certain Uchiha dragging her out of the hospital. Sakura sighed and collapsed onto her plush desk chair. She hadn't spoken to Sasaki in almost a month now. She saw him in passing when he was out on patrol in the merchant district, but he avoided her gaze. She was caught with being frustrated with his behavior and also feeling hurt. Sakura hated that they were fighting, but she wasn't going to give in first. Sakura wasn't even sure why exactly they were still fighting. They rarely argued and usually came to silent agreements to forgive each other whenever they did. Sasaki couldn't still be angry with her for having jumped in front of an attack intended for him. It wasn't the first time that she had done so, and it wasn't likely to be the last time either. A knock on the door snapped Sakura out of her reverie. It was probably Shizune come to kick her out of the hospital again. The other hospital staff had given up with informing Sakura when the end of her day was and went straight to the only person other than the Hokage that could get her to leave the hospital. Come in, Sakura called out, shuffling her papers around to make it appear as though she were on her way out. Looking up, she saw the last person she expected to find in her office standing in the doorway. _ shouldn't you be on your way home? Sasaki raised an eyebrow at her and made his way to her desk. He placed a takeout bowl of ramen in front of her. Sakura looked up at him confused and he looked away stuffing his hands in his pockets. The Dobi wanted to bring you dinner but he forgot that he had something to do. So he asked me to bring it and you decided to do him a favor. Sakura pulled the food towards herself. She was so hungry that she felt no shame in accepting food. Sasaki just nodded and took a seat across from her in one of the spare chairs.
How does this stay bite?
She ate while they sat together in silence. It seemed that none of them were going to talk until Sasuke broke the silence.
Please, I don't want trouble.
From one of her patients, Sasaki raised his chin at the bouquet on her desk. He had noticed them when he came in. It wasn't odd for her to have flowers in her office. Former patients in Yamanaka were always bringing her floral gifts. Ina, I would be a little worried if a patient gave me gardenias. Sakura started to ramble on, using his question to build up a conversation. It would be a little inappropriate and a little weird. Why gardenias? Especially Sasaki took the bait. This is how they operated when they had an argument. They would start talking about something and forget about what they were mad about to begin with. It usually only worked for trivial things, but he hoped it could apply to their current situation.
I do
He was
love
tired
the
of being
smell
upset
of
with Sakura over
formaldehyde
something
in the
that wasn't her
morning.
fault. She couldn't help how he felt. Sakura stared at him with a blank look on her face before breaking out into one of her soft smiles. It's a secret. Sasaki narrowed his eyes at her and then let out a huff of air. If she didn't want to tell him, fine. It wasn't going to bother him. Considering she said it would be inappropriate, he could only assume it had
Take
something
your
to do with
time,
romantic
boy.
feelings. A
Dissection
feeling
is
of
an
relief
art.
filled him when he remembered that Ino had given her the flowers. Unless Ino was no longer interested in Sai,
Remember,
highly
slow
unlikely
and
considering
steady
he kept
wins the
catching them
race.
engaging in
What's the
displays of
matter?
affection not
Don't you
appropriate
like
for public
cutting
in alleyways
things
while on
open?
patrol. The flowers
No,
were probably just an
Wow,
harmless
that's
gift.
disgusting.
Come on, I'll walk you home.
What's the
Sasaki
matter?
helped
Don't you
Sakura
like
clean up the
cutting
trash from her
things
meal as she
open?
packed her
Take
bag
your
to go
time,
home.
boy.
You don't need to walk me
Dissection is
home.
an art.
I'll be fine on my own. Sakura narrowed her eyes at him, escorting her home with an innocent gesture, but after his initial overprotective reaction to her getting stabbed, she was wary of his behavior.
Oh,
He
that
wasn't some
smells
delicate creature that needed protection. I know I don't need to. It's just been a while. Sakura blinked at that. She didn't want to
Damn,
get her
I'm
hopes
good.
up, but her stomach became
That
airy.
was easy.
Maybe, just maybe, Sasuke had missed spending time with her, too. And walking her home gave them just a little more time together. Okay,
Looking
Sakura
good
pushed
today.
ahead of him, trying to hide the flush of pink on her
Sorry,
face.
but I have to go
Sasaki
study.
fell face first on his bed. He was so heavily distracted that he didn't even realize that he actually used the front door to
So,
enter his home.
wanna be
He
my
had been
girlfriend?
using his
Oh,
bedroom window
Jimmy.
to avoid any unwanted questions from his mother.
You maybe
Sasaki
wanna
didn't
go out
want to believe
sometime?
that it had meant anything, that
I have to
Sakura's
go
supposed death had
practice.
activated
Bye.
his Manjikyo sharing. He had originally believed that the only people close enough to him to cause that kind of
Hello,
emotional
fellow
trauma were
student.
Itachi or Nar. And even then, he believed that it would require their actual death. Somewhere along the way, Sakura had become that important to him. He couldn't deny that he was in a better mood now after having walked Sakura home for the first time in ages. Just being in her presence made his chest warm, and he caught himself smiling as she rambled on about the goings-on at the hospital for the past month that they hadn't spoken.
Almost made me
Sasaki
laugh.
had missed her. He had missed her chatter and her smiles. He missed watching her eat food he had brought for her, and he had missed walking her home after a long day. He missed the way her eyes glowed under the soft porch light when he dropped her off at home at night. He had missed her silvery voice wishing him good night and telling him that she would see him later. I'm Sasaki mumbled into his pillow. Mikoto paused in the middle of pinning her family's clothing on the clothesline out in the yard. The voice sounded familiar, but she had never heard it shout her son's name quite like that before. Mikoto sighed and clipped the last of her husband's shirts and went to check on the IATE visitor. A flash of pink stormed past her line of vision when she slid open the shoji door and crossed the threshold. Haruno Sakura was on a rampage in her home, and that could only mean one thing. Sasaki had missed yet another appointment. Mikoto listened to the stomping of steps as Sakura made her way to the second floor.
Hello, boys
There was
and
another cry of
girls. I'm
Sasake's
Miss
full name,
Peters, and
a
I'm
crash,
going to be
some
your
rustling,
music
and then
teacher
silence.
this year.
Guess there's nothing to worry about. Makoto went back to her daily chores. Itachi, who had been sweeping the front entrance and had let Sakura in, raised an eyebrow at his mother as she dusted the living room. A girl is in your 17-year-old son's room, and you think there's nothing to worry about. It's Sakura-chan, and she's here to check on his eyes. Makoto knew Sakura was a responsible girl. She had been Sasuke's friend for years now. Besides, she seemed so pure and innocent. What trouble could she possibly get up to? It's a house call for the doctor. Let me rephrase that for you. Oto Sanitachi smiled serenely at his mother. A beautiful 17-year-old girl is in the room with her barely awake hormonal 17-year-old son. And it's gotten really quiet. Too quiet almost. Sasu-chan. Mikoto dropped her duster and dashed up the stairs. She would never be able to look Medusa in the eye again if something were to happen. Sakura, not until marriage, young man. Mikoto burst into her youngest son's room and then blinked at the sight of Sasaki and Sakura were innocently sitting on his bed. Sasaki still groggy from sleep and Sakura with her hands cupping his face. Green glowing chakra enveloping Sasuke's eyes. Ah, sorry about that. Mikoto said. Sakura gave her a sheepish grin. She pulled her hands away from Sasake's face and wrung them in her lap.
Jimmy, that was
I
actually
could
on
have had one
time.
large victory.
Great
And
job.
if Sasuke underscore keeps missing all of his checkups.
It's easy
Stop
when you know
scheduling
how.
them so early in the morning, Sasaki mumbled. Now, can you two leave or are you going to watch me change? Huh. Sakura blinked slowly at Sasaki, who raised an eyebrow at her. It took her another beat for her to leap up off of his bed. She was so focused on getting his checkup done, she hadn't noticed that Sasaki was still shirtless and in bed. She excused herself and shuffled out of the room. Mikoto rolled her eyes and then followed Sakura out. Sasake's ears were tinged red and she wanted to laugh. It was a little late to get so bashful around his mother. Mikoto found Sakura in the sitting room with her other son. It looked as if she took the opportunity to give Itachi a checkup as well. Izumi was watching the examination, completely fascinated. Mikoto assumed she came in while she ran upstairs to make sure her youngest kept his hands to himself.
I can tell Mom
You're
about
so
that
amazing,
tomorrow.
Sakura.
She'd be so
Aiken,
mad.
Izumi sighed grayly. I wish I had the talent for medical endoscopy. It would be such a good skill to add to my resume. Mikoto beamed at the praise bestowed upon Sakura. She remembered the little girl lacking in confidence and was proud of the kunoichi that Sakura had become. Mikoto grinned slightly at the comment Izumi had made. The Uchiha were talented and skilled fighters, but none of them had the gift for healing that Sakura had. That was a skill that none of the girls the elders tried to sell could boast, and none of them had her strength and her skills in taijutsu. Mikoto had kept her eye on all of the dark-haired Uchiha beauties, and she could confidently say that none of them could hold a candle to Sakura in looks or skill. It would make it that much easier for her to push the sweet girl as a candidate for marriage for her youngest. All she needed to do was convince the Harunos to set up an OMI for their children. Mikoto was sure that as soon as Sakura was placed in front of Sasaki as someone with potential to have a romantic relationship with, he would see her as a woman and not just as his teammate and childhood friend. Are you attending the festival tonight? Sakura Aiken. Izumi asked as she poured tea for her. Although she and Itachi weren't making plans to wed soon, Mikoto was at least elated that Izumi helped with household duties such as playing hostess. It was almost as if it were a promise that she would take up the mantle of being the next Uchiha matriarch in the future. Yes, Sakura's eyes shone with excitement. Mikoto's chest filled with warmth. She never tired of seeing Sakura's childlike wonder. I'm going to meet Ino and Hinata after work and then we'll head off to the festival together. The good mood Mikoto was in deflated. Why wasn't Sakura attending the festival with her team? Sadly, Naruto and Sai would be part of the group, killing any romantic intention. But at least Sakura and Sasaki would be going together. You're not going? Itachi asked, looking past his mother. Mikoto turned slightly to see Sasaki enter the room. I'll be there. On patrol, Sasaki nodded at Sakura and then left the room. Mikoto frowned. She would have to talk to him later about proper greeting. He was getting so much more standoffish as he got older, and that worried her. He should wear a kimono. Mikoto decided to turn her attention to Sakura. She was going to attend the festival with Itachi and Izumi with her escort, and it was likely that she would run into the pink-haired girl. She planned on it, especially if Sakura dressed up for the event. She would have to find her family's camera. I believe that's what Ino had planned. Sakura giggled. She said, we should take any opportunity we can to dress up. Thank you, Enoch came. Mikoto smirked inwardly, knowing that the Yamanaka heirs would do their best to make Sakura shine. The boy girl was the perfect friend for Sakura. They got into squabbles and had their own rivalry like Naruto and Sasaki. But there was a gentle and protective warmth that radiated off the blonde girl whenever Sakura was involved. Ino frowned at the pink mop on top of Sakura's head. She sighed and pulled out a tonic she had brewed with some herbs that she used to maintain the silkiness of her own long blonde hair and slathered it all over Sakura's pink locks. You finally grow your hair out, and you don't even take proper care of it, Ino grumbled, taking a comb to her hair. I wasn't trying to grow it out. It sort of snuck up on you, Sakura grumbled. She had been so busy with work at the hospital and making sure that Sasaki and Itachi kept track of their eye examinations that she had been neglecting her hair even more than usual. She hadn't noticed that her once cropped hair had grown to mid-back and that her bangs had become overgrown.
I don't think you know what kindness
I've been
means.
busy. Well, you look like a shaggy dog, Ino huffed. She was starting to miss when Sakura cared about her looks above everything else. It would have made her job of dialing her up a lot easier. I'm trimming the split ends. I don't care what you say. As long as you do a better job than when we were 12. Fine. Go ahead. Relax. I won't be using it tonight. See. Real scissors. Ino cleaned up Sakura's bangs, allowing them to fall in a small cone sweep style. Ino smiled at her handiwork, proud that she had cut Sakura's hair in a way that framed her face beautifully. Sakura blinked her pretty jade eyes up at her, and Ino squealed. So pretty. Maybe even as pretty as me. That's not as reassuring as you want it to be. Ino begged. Hush and let me make you pretty. Ino turned her back around to face the vanity so that she could continue to pin her hair. She pulled Sakura's hair into a simple knot high on the top of her head and laced her favorite cosmos into the front of the bun. Ino smiled softly at the lovely picture her best friend made. Sakura had always been cute, but she had really become a beauty as they became older. Soon enough, she was going to have to share her forehead with men that would want her affections. You're going to have men crawling at your feet. I don't want men crawling at my feet. Ino shoved her aside and pulled at the white and gold trimmed obi around her torso. She was tired of having this conversation with Ino. She had already explained that she was perfectly content with being Sasuke's friend and enjoying the relationship they already had. You can't keep pining after that guy forever, Sakura. Ino frowned. It was cute that Sakura had a crush on her teammate when they were younger, but it had lost its charm now that they were reaching adulthood, especially since it seemed like Sasaki wasn't going to be making any moves on her. That frustrated Ino since she was so sure he was interested in Sakura. Why don't you try dating someone if you're just going to keep your feelings to yourself? Move on. You're plenty popular. I couldn't do that. Sakura bit her lower lip before giving Ino a half-hearted smile. It would be horrible of me to use someone's feelings like that. I can't let someone think that I would return their feelings if my heart belongs to someone else. But wouldn't it be nice to have someone to lean on when you have to watch Sasaki carry on with his life, marry, and go on to have little Uchihas? That's why I have you, hey. Sakura hugged Ino's arm and Ino squeezed her back. It was rare that it was Sakura that clung onto her instead of the other way around. Yeah, you always have me. Shuei hated patrolling during festival times. He was unfortunate to have to work while most of his friends were having fun. Usually, he would sneak off to play while on the job, but he was unlucky to be partnered with Sasaki, who refused to let him goof off. You're so boring, shrimp, Shuei sighed as he chewed on Yakiba. He watched as Sasake's left eye twitched. It was the third stand that they had stopped by and Sasuke refused to eat while working. Unlike Shuei, he's always been boring. The twitch became worse as Sasaki turned to see the whiskered face of his best friend and sighed. I'm surprised to see you at any stand that doesn't have ramen. Sasaki crossed his arms in front of his chest and raised his eyebrow at Sai. He expected the taller Nin to be dragged around by Ino not accompanying Nar. I'm even more surprised to see you. I am meeting Miss Beautiful later. She's getting ready with Ugly right now. I still don't get how you come up with these nicknames, kid. Shuei tossed his trash into a bin and joined the younger shinobi's conversation. Need to get your eyes checked if you think Haruno is ugly. Yeah, she's like the prettiest girl in the village. Naruto turned on Sai. It was something that had been bothering him since he came back, but Sakura kept telling him to let it go. Don't let Haga Hinata hear you saying that. Sai gave Naruto one of his faux innocent smiles. I can only imagine what she would think. Second prettiest. Sakura-chan is the second prettiest right behind Hinata-chan, the most beautiful girl in the world.
I smell free food.
Sasaki rolled his eyes. A lot had changed over the years. It felt like forever ago when Naruto thought Hinata was a weirdo with creepy eyes and used to follow Sakura around with his eyes full of admiration. So much had changed since they were 12. Sasaki understood that best. Sasaki didn't understand what was so appealing about the Hyuga earrings. Her dojutsu gave her blank white lavender-tinted eyes, which would have been the only unique trait about her if it weren't for the fact she shared those same eyes with all of her clan members. Other than that, she had traditional long dark hair and was just a little too demure in his opinion. Sasaki knew he was being biased, but after looking at Sakura's jade eyes and petal pink hair all these years, all other types of physical traits just fell flat. So, he had to disagree with the underscore he called his best friend. Haga Hinata wasn't the prettiest girl. Looks like there's your Miss Beautiful, and Shuei let out a low whistle. The boys looked in the direction he was looking at and found Ino leading Sakura and Hinata through the crowds. Wow, you said she was only a friend, right, shrimp? I'm just going to. Sasaki pulled on the back of Shiwa's flak vest, keeping him from heading towards the girls. He flashed his cousin a red glare before following his teammates into the crowd. He was keeping to the perimeter where no one could touch him, but now he felt inclined to join the throng of people. He reached his teammates just as Sakura was pushing Naruto towards Hinata. Go win her a prize. Sakura hissed. She pinched the bridge of her nose when Naruto threw his arm over Hinata's shoulders, causing the girl to go weak in the knees and stumble. Sasaki blinked deliciously. That was something he usually did. He made a note to examine himself for any quirks he may have picked up from his friends. If Sakura was picking stuff up from him, he was sure he might have picked something up as well. Sasaki stuffed his hands in his pockets and waited for Sakura to notice his presence. Ino gave Sakura a smirk and pointed behind her. Sakura turned in place and beamed when she saw Sasaki. Sasaki chose to ignore the fluttering sensation in stomach and gave her a small grin. Hello, Sasaki. Sakura clasped her hands behind her back and Sasaki had to resist looking below her neck. She had the habit of doing that without realizing it made her chest stick out a little more. Although she was slender and petite, she had delicate curves that made Sasaki wonder how he had ignored them for the past 2 years, especially since she wore a tight top and short skirt as part of her shinobi attire. A short skirt that made it difficult to keep his eyes away from her bottom. Hey, having fun working, Sakura teased. She knew that if he hadn't been working, he would have been trying to avoid the crowds of people. More people meant more girls, and he still didn't like the attention he got. Yes, the whole duty is a blast. Sasaki retorted sarcastically, causing her to giggle. Oh shoot, they ditched me. Sakura turned to look for Ino and sighed. Turning her back on Sasaki gave him a good view of her creamy neck. The slender column of it was shown to advantage with her updo hairstyle. Something about it screamed Yamanaka, and he mentally cursed her. Well, it's part of my responsibilities to help lost children. Sasaki smirked and tugged on her kimono sleeve. She pouted at him and he had to look away from her tempting pink lips. Looking at Sakura was getting harder now that he was aware of his attraction to her. Let's go find them. Itachi sighed as he heard the shutter of his mother's camera go off yet again. Allowing her to accompany him and I had been fine. The mistake was allowing her to bring her wretched camera. Mikoto had spent a majority of their time at the festival snapping pictures of anything she found. The two of them doing that was adorable. Izumi whispered behind a stick of dango. I think I just found out how we can get some privacy. Itachi raised an eyebrow and nodded at her to continue. He wasn't one for public displays of affection, but he would very much like a chance to hold Izumi's hand. He hadn't been able to make a single move without his mother's intense gaze on them. Look over there. Izumi nodded her head in the direction of the crowd, and Itachi followed her line of sight. If he hadn't been so skilled at hiding any sign of emotion from his face, he would have dropped his jaw and openly gaped. Sakura's pink hair was like a beacon. She was very hard to miss. She was smiling pleasantly, enjoying a candy apple, which was normal for a festival. What wasn't normal was finding his younger brother shirking his duties in favor of walking around with his friend. She's so pretty, Izumi murmured. Like a doll, Itachi had to agree. Sakura looked deceptively delicate in her green kimono. Her slender frame seemed made for wearing one. Everything about her seemed small and fragile, and it amused him. No one would know the kind of damage she could cause with her fists just by looking at her. You would have looked lovelier in a kimono as well, Itachi whispered back to her. He smirked at the light shade of red that I turned. He rarely wore it, but it had its perks. How do we get your mother to spot her without being too obvious? We don't. She's got a radar for Sakura-chan. Itachi pointed at his mother who was already looking in the direction of Sakura. She squealed and gave a little hop when she saw her. I knew the green kimono would just look darling on her. Best purchase I've ever made. Mikoto pushed through the crowds of people. Camera at the ready. Your mother bought Sakura-chan a kimono. It appears so. Itachi replied equally as shocked. He knew she favored the girl greatly, but didn't realize just how much. Do you think she's noticed yet? Noticed what? Wait, you didn't. I smirked, eyes narrowed in glee. I can't believe you didn't see it. See what? Asked exasperated. She was finding too much amusement in this. He only hoped she wouldn't make another comment about his glasses. Your brother was holding Sakura-chan's hand. Izumi let out a laugh that bordered almost a cackle. If she sees that he could have days, possibly weeks, free of her incessant talk about weddings and babies. As nice as that sounds, maybe we should rescue the kids from her. Itachi watched as Mikoto latched herself onto Sakura's arm. Sasaki must have seen her coming because he stood a greater distance away from Sakura than he previously was. Or not. Well, let's get going. We need to find a good spot for the fireworks and maybe get some wok. Izumi asked sweetly, taking his hand in hers and leading him to a vendor with bags of cotton candy. Mikoto was excited to stop by the camera shop the next day to get her photos developed. She got so many splendid candid shots of both of her sons and plenty of Sakura who finally wore the kimono she had bought for her a few years ago. The pale green fabric was a lovely fit, but now she wanted to see her in a red one with cherry blossom patterning. After walking around the festival with Sakura and Sasaki for a bit, Mikoto had decided to call it night. She wanted to be home when her husband was done with his own shift at the station so that she could tell him how much fun she had, although she was lonely. As they ate some food she brought from the festival, she had insisted that he take a day off the next time there was one so he could escort her and win her a prize like he had when they were younger. Mikoto enjoyed making her husband flustered when she reminded him of how he used to court her. This looks like a good spot for my new base. Mikoto adjusted her new ceramic pot on a bookshelf in the informal sitting room. She liked to collect pretty things she purchased from vendors and display them. She was quite picky, so she never went overboard. Such a pretty design. Mikoto took the time to admire the glazed painting. Such a pretty and curious design of hawks nestled on cherry blossom tree branches. She was tracing the line work with a delicate touch when she heard the shuji door slam open and then shut and then the stomping of feet. Sasu-chan Mikoto her head in confusion as she watched her youngest storm past her to the stairs. The back of his neck and his ears were a brilliant shade of red. I wonder what happened to him. Author's note. So, this is a lot earlier than I had planned, but the last 2 chapters were so short, so what the heck. Longest author's note ahead. I think it's longer than the others. Since the start of this FIC, some rare reviewers wanted me to have someone else interested in Sakura or have her try to move on. I'm okay with her attempting to move on, but not with another person. It feels wrong in OC. I'm also the kind of person that doesn't like love triangles, which makes my love of K-dramas so frustrating and kind of why I gave up on them or dating when still interested in someone else. So, I'm sorry. I will not introduce a love rival. Misunderstandings are fine. Another person actually being involved is a big no for me. In case anyone was wondering, gardenias symbolize secret love. So, in the last chapter, that was Ino sort of being a little mean and teasing Sakura for not confessing her feelings. Also, for any Hinata fans, please don't think I was bashing her. It's just supposed to be Sasake's personal opinion because, well, he's got Sakura. Although, there is a tiny part of me that gets weirded out in fics when Hinata and Ino are praised for being beautiful and Sakura is described as plain in comparison. Yes, they're pretty, but in canon, Sakura is the only one that has her looks commented on, not the other two. Writing is getting easier now that I'm not in the hospital. So, there will probably be another update on Sunday or Monday. So guys, what do you think about this Naruto story? Tell me your opinion in the comments. And if you want more Naruto what if stories, make sure to subscribe to Universe of Naruto. Thanks for watching.